Good morning. It's Wednesday. We are starting day 13. I can't believe we're on day 13 of the Alec Murdaugh murder trials. It's wild. We have not been able to see much of a through line in this case just yet. I don't know what's going to happen today, but I do know we're starting off the morning with cross-examination of the GSR tester. So we've seen the people who collected the raincoat. We've seen we've seen who's collected the raincoat. We've seen who did the GSR lifts. And now we're getting to the person who put the microscope to the lifts and said that there were some small number of particles of GSR with regard to one thing, and then some larger numbers with regard to the inside of the tarp-like raincoat. Can we just call it that? Are we just calling it, can we call it the tarp-like raincoat at this point? Because that's what it is. It is a tarp-looking like raincoat. It's just been. I'm going to give you my thoughts. Court is taking its sweet tea time this morning. Let me know where you're coming in from. Today's a busy day. I will be leaving in the afternoon for the airport. Replay crew, we've got timestamps down below. And this afternoon, I've got a new podcast for you all about the Tom Girardi indictments and all of the information we learned in the actual text of the indictments. They didn't just charge them, they laid it out in those indictments. So we will absolutely be going through those indictments as well. So before court comes back into session, let us just go. Let us get rolling and see where everybody's coming in from.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not. Let's get into it.
For all of you that have a headache, I hear you. I was just. Good morning to my fellow Tennesseans here in Tennessee. I have hot water for now. Honestly, I woke up late because I was packing yesterday, and packing makes me anxious. And so it takes me way longer than I think it should. I need to just reassess what I think it should take, but whatever. And so packing takes me way too long. So I was up too late. So now I'm just tired, but I'm packed so I can stream with y'all. I bumped my flights back to make sure that I wouldn't miss today, because whenever, for the established law nerds, the OG law nerds, whenever I get on a plane, something wild happens. So I am ready to just be on a plane when court is done for the day and fly at night. So it's going to be hard to be like, okay, bye this afternoon. But that's what we're doing. So today I'm going to try to tell you everything I have to think about the case before we get to that. And we don't have court yet. So here's what we've got so far from best I can see. My frustration with this case, and this case is becoming like painful to watch, but we're invested. Y'all, it's like a TV show. I need you to give me examples because I can't think of anyone at the moment, but it's like the TV show that you're invested in, but then like the last 3 seasons are just painful, but you're invested. So you're like, I'm riding out the terrible last seasons because I know we're coming to an end. And even if I hate the end, I need to be there for the end. Like I need to see what happens, but I hate it, but I'm here, but I hate it, but I'm here. That's where we're at with this trial. Kimberly, no Facebook today. No, we got so many bots on Facebook yesterday. It was getting really difficult to manage. So I'm going to pop over and let the Facebook group know that they can come here. Facebook does not have easy moderation tools like we have over here on YouTube. So it makes it difficult. Oh, we're about to bring the action. Oh, Lost. Fair. Oh, True Blood. Fair.
State's ready. State's ready.
Bring
the jury.
The jury. It's time to bring the action. I was thinking Grey's Anatomy, but I was trying to be generous. I thought I was overreacting on that. But yes, that's what I was thinking. All right, we've got the jury coming in. Literally me watching Grey's Anatomy. Lost, True Blood, The Office, Lost, Game of Thrones, Lost. Dexter, Glee, Lost, Grey's, Game of Thrones, Grey's, Manifest, X-Files, Lost. You guys are great. This is what it is. Good morning from the US. Good morning or good afternoon to Greece. A lot of you said Lost. Lost, it's true. Lost, it's true. It's true. Game of Thrones and Supernatural. I skipped the last season of Supernatural. I still have to go back and watch it. I haven't done it yet. So with all of you, that's how I feel about this trial right now. That's exactly how I feel about this trial. We are invested. We need to know how it ends, but we can't follow what is actually happening. It is the attorney's job, mostly the prosecutors, because they're the ones with the burden of proof, to make it clear what is happening. And so far, we are confused, we have headaches, and there are a few key moments, but the few key moments so far are not a story through line. It looks like Buster's sitting in a slightly different place this morning. I'm going to go ahead and switch feeds and make sure that we're back to this court over on our 3-piece feed, which it looks like we are. So that's what we're going to do. Even if the sound gets too bad, I'm going to switch it. But even though the closed captioning are bad, it's still better than none. But we don't have the jury in yet, so we don't have the audio back yet. All right. With all of that, thank you. Good morning. Hello from Tokyo. Tuning in from the gym. I wish I was at the gym. I've been following the commentary. Thank you. I wanted to ask why none of the sides don't object to anything. I have no idea. It might be the habits and practices of this court. It might be because they think the judge is just going to overrule it, though he's sustained the good objections. It might just be that that's their regional practice. I don't know. It blows me away that there are not more aggressive objections. Objections are a critical part of trial. Objecting is actually a huge part of trial. Like a huge part of trial is objecting. So I've been looking at the Deb Heard trial again, and that just feels so much more professional. Even with all the Elaine stuff, this trial feels messy. This trial feels messy. The courtroom feels messy. All of it. I heard the judge talking, but we still have no sound. So I don't know what's happening. Good morning, Emily. Do you think Alec might testify because the previous crimes have already been made known to the jury? I don't think so. I don't think the state has put him in a position where he has to testify. I really don't.
Thank you. Good morning.
My daughter is going to have a
Day
baby
number
girl this
13.
summer. Silence, congratulations.
Cross-examination.
Day 13,
So-
cross-examination of the gunshot residue analyst. And that's where we're starting off this morning.
Good morning.
I have
morning.
notes
Is it
and a
Agent
goat.
Fletcher or Miss Fletcher?
Miss Fletcher's fine.
Are you an agent?
Technically, I am commissioned. However,
Okay,
I'm a forensic scientist.
right. Okay. Well, Ms. Fletcher,
So technically agent.
just want to
Don't ask her what's so special about it,
You
Jim.
testified
That's a
about
dick move.
yesterday and hit some
You'll like that?
smaller points. but
That worked well
you
for me.
pretty much you said this yesterday, but gunshot primer residue is not biodegradable, correct?
No, sir. They're composed of heavy metals of lead, barium, and antimony. So they're individual particles of those metals. They are not biodegradable.
Nope, that's me.
So
Sorry.
if gunshot primer residue is on a surface, it will
Right.
stay on that surface and will
Right.
not degrade for hundreds of years.
Potentially, there's not studies that go out that far, but potentially.
But
Thanks, y'all.
the only way that
I'm trying
current science knows to get
the hangry mama. Yes, I'll
primer
give you a gold
gunshot
star if
residue
you have perfect attendance for the trial.
off of anything is through cleaning, wiping it off, scrubbing it off, spraying it off. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And it comes out when,
I was like killing my pen
A gun
yesterday. I
is
had to
shot,
switch pens.
right?
Yes, that's how gunshot primer residue is formed. It comes out through the muzzle and in a semi-automatic through the ejector port or through a revolver through the muzzle gap. So any opening within the gun, it'll come out.
Yeah, so the gunshot primer.
Oh, Maria, slow
the
mode is
gunshot primer
necessary.
residue will
I know
Well,
it can be
follow the
frustrating, but it is.
projectile, whether it's
it
pellets
is
or
needed.
a bullet, out the barrel of the gun, rifle, or pistol, will it not?
Yes, sir, it will.
And then if you have a semi-automatic rifle or shotgun, gunshot primer residue will go follow the discharge cartridge or shell.
Why
shot
are we repeating
as
the
it opens
direct?
up, right?
Yes, sir. Studies have
Do
shown.
you wanna
as
be the
far as about
prosecutor, my
60
guy?
feet Beyond that.
This is a
they
direct
haven't been-
examination.
Okay.
That's
So
already
within
been done.
60 feet of a
Jim, are
gun
you
being shot.
jealous? Are you jealous of the prosecutors?
There will be gunshot primer residue on whatever's around there. Fair enough?
Whatever's around the bullet per se.
Okay.
When it gets out that far, it's more in the immediate vicinity of the bullet.
GSR not biodegradable. The jury went back
But
to sleep for the morning.
Gunshot primer residue will accumulate on the firearm that's being used, will it not?
Yes, sir, it will.
And if it's not properly cleaned and maintained, I mean, it'll stay there until it gets wiped off by someone's hand or
That's what she
or-
said on direct.
left out in the rain or sprayed off, right?
Yes, sir, it will.
Okay. And when you were referring to transfer GSR, is that one of the things you're referring to?
Yes, sir. If you touch a gun that had been fired at any point, then you have the potential to transfer it to your hands.
At any
Now, this jury
point.
has seen,
If you've
throughout the
touched
course
a
of
gun that's
trial,
been fired
a number of
At
folks holding up
any
some firearms that are in evidence.
Point.
A couple of shotguns, 300 blackout, and
he
they
needs to be quick
seen
and get out.
jury.
That's all the
excuse me,
testimony
seen
he
witnesses
needs to
hold
argue.
up. Mr. Miller held up yesterday this blue rain jacket, which you had identified having 38
Let's go
particles
test
or
him for
more on it.
GSR. They should have. They should test the
my
prosecution
question
for
to you is-
GSR.
Is
Could
it
be
very
hilarious.
possible that where you're sitting right now, there's gunshot primer residue?
That is a possibility. Yes, sir.
He shook it all over the courtroom. I think it's more than a possibility.
Now, you did some,
They should have tested his hands. That would have been great.
you work in the Forensic Services Laboratory at SLED, correct?
Correct.
And there's a trace evidence operation manual pertaining to gunshot primer residue analysis, correct?
Oh,
Yes,
what
sir,
did they
there
not
is.
do?
That governs you follow that manual, do you not?
I
Yes, I
hear
do.
them say manual, and I'm
And
like, what?
would you
what's
agree
the
with the
beef?
statement that gunshot primer residue evidence is most probative in the following situations? From subjects who have not sustained a gunshot wound, from subjects who have not been in the proximity to the discharge of a firearm or admitted to discharging a firearm, and from subjects who were not found in the possession of a firearm.
I do agree with that. Yes, sir.
And that's a statement of the,
Oh, because he
your
said he
operations
had a
manual.
gun.
Yes, sir, it is.
He would have known that, though.
and you obtained
Alec would have known
clothing, which we know is from
Everybody
Richard
knows that.
Alexander Murdaugh, shirt, shorts, and shoes. And did someone under your supervision did lifts from those clothing items so that you could analyze the particles, correct?
Yes, sir. Jamie Hall collected the particle lifts off of those items.
And those and that collection was done on June 8th, I believe, was it not?
Yes, sir, it was.
And are you aware that the clothes were collected on June the 8th?
Yes, sir, I was.
And were you aware that when the clothes were collected, they were wet?
What?
I didn't know that they were wet until Jamie opened up the evidence, and it was evident that the shirt was a little damp and the shoes were definitely damp.
So it's just been a few hours that they had been placed in some sort of bag.
The
and-
prosecution
and you
should have
opened up,
mentioned
they're
that,
wet,
maybe.
And you smelled laundry detergent.
That's correct.
Were you aware that it had been raining that evening at Moselle?
I was not aware of that, no, sir.
The
Because it makes it look like the prosecution
any
is
event,
hiding something.
you tested after Ms. Hall, is that it, Jamie Hall?
Yes, sir.
She did the lifts. And you located 3 particles from the white
The
shirt.
prosecution should have covered it
You
because
were
it feels
3
like they're hiding
particles from
something.
the shorts,
Yes,
no particles from the shoes,
yes.
and there was no particles on Mr. Murdaugh's hands.
There was
Oh.
one particle on his right hand.
I'm sorry, there was 1 particle on his hand. And you would agree
Raining
that
or washing or
that amount
sweating
of
because his shoes are really wet.
primer residue, gunshot primer residue found on an individual who you had been informed had a
Oh,
firearm
they
in
said
his
about the
hand
shoes
when
being
the
wet. I
police
don't remember
arrived,
that.
that it was consistent with the transfer from a firearm.
When I analyzed the evidence, I did not know that he had a firearm in his hand, but.
Tracy, we need your
That
secrets
would be consistent
of
with
your
somebody
laundry
who had a
process.
firearm in his hand prior to collection.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you learned that at least by June the 9th at 11:03 a.m. when you had a telephone call with Agent Owen, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you told him that that amount of gunshot residue would be consistent with the transfer from a firearm.
Yes, sir.
And you stand by that here today.
I do.
Because it is what it is.
Now, the seatbelt assembly, let's talk about that for a minute. You did lists, you and Ms. Hall or Agent Hall did lists of the buckle, is that right?
Yes, sir.
The latch plate, is that right?
Yes.
And then 3 spots along the belt, the webbing.
Yes, sir. 3 areas along the belt. We divided the belt into 3 sections and did both sides of it. And those were the 5 areas that we collected.
I see. So did you take lists from the entire webbing?
Yes, sir. We retracted it as far as it would go, divided it into 3 sections
I see.
and collected them.
And the results of the lifts, and you did analysis, was there's 1 particle on the buckle, right?
That's correct.
0 on the latch plate,
Correct.
0 on the belt, on any of the sections of the belt.
That's correct.
So the whole belt was 0. And so they found 1 particle.
I confirmed 1 particle on the buckle. Yes, sir.
And you can't say how or when the particle was deposited on the belt, can you?
I cannot.
Nope.
And I think you told this to Agent Owen that if Alec Murdaugh was shooting earlier in the day or anytime at some point in time while he had that vehicle, and he got after shooting, he got in the vehicle, it has the ability to transfer any gunshot residue primer to that vehicle.
Yep.
Yes, sir. I cannot tell you when that particle was deposited.
Which makes sense.
So if he had had that vehicle for 2 years and he'd been out shooting and got in it, I could have deposited 1 particle on the buckle and it could stay there unless it got knocked off, right?
Yeah, unless it was cleaned, it could have stayed there. Yes, sir.
And if he went and got a gun and then put it in the car and then he got back in the car and he got transferred GSR on him and he could hit the buckle and that could put it on there, right?
Yes, sir. That could have happened.
It's just very, very small. You can't see it with a naked eye, but it stays there forever unless it's moved.
That's correct, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Now,
made
you
your
were also
point
asked
very
to
well. Maybe it's time to just
do
be
an
done.
analysis of blue rain jacket. Do you remember that?
Because
Yes,
he
sir, I
made some
do.
very good points.
And once again, just like the seatbelt, there's no way for you to know when the gunshot primer residue was deposited on the blue rain
Unless
jacket.
it was cleaned.
That's correct.
But
It
there's
could be at any point
on
in
this
time
timeline,
from
there's
the
no
date
time
that
to
blue
clean.
rain jacket was manufactured, right?
Well, probably not on the manufacturer date unless they were firing
Right.
guns in the manufacturing plant, but any time after a consumer takes possession, probably.
So if a consumer took possession of that garment 4 years ago, and we're going to talk about how you can get gunshot primer residue on it, but unless it's cleaned off or washed off, it'll stay for 4 years.
It could, yes.
And you have no idea how gunshot primer residue ended up on that garment, correct?
I cannot tell you how it got there
Or when it got there,
or when it got there.
or whether it was being worn when it got there, whether it was being worn inside out when it was deposited on there, or whether it was laid on top of a gun, for example.
I cannot tell you any of those scenarios.
Okay. So Mr. Randolph Murdaugh, are you aware that this rain jacket was found in a closet in September of 2021 at Mr. Randolph Murdaugh's home?
That was the information that was on the submission, yes.
And he died, I think, on June 10th, 2021. Were you aware of that?
why is that
I
relevant to
remember
her
hearing
at
news
all?
about it.
But why is that relevant to her at all?
But if he, before he got into his truck, had taken off this poncho and flipped it over and threw it on the back seat of his truck where he
Oh,
kept
that's why
his
he's still asking
shotgun
questions.
bow whoop,
He's getting to it's
and it
possible.
laid on top of this dirty old shotgun, it could have deposited 38 particles of gunshot primer residue, right?
If the shotgun was not clean, there is a potential for the transfer off of that shotgun, yes.
Explain it away. Okay. Jim, I don't know what
And
else
if
you need.
The gun,
It's
if
possible.
Bo Whoop hadn't been cleaned in years, there would be
No objection. What's he saying?
Bo Whoop.
What the fuck is Bo Whoop?
OOP, the name of Mr. Randolph Murdaugh's shotgun. If
How-
that shotgun hadn't been cleaned in years,
What in the fuck
it'd be
is
more likely you would
happening?
get gunshot residue deposit on anything that came on top of it, right?
The transfer would be more likely, yes, sir.
The prosecution's objection was objection. What is he saying?
Now, you also testified
Yep,
that
the
38
shotgun name.
particles of gunshot primer residue was a significant amount. You
Yes,
remember
sir.
saying that?
Yes, sir.
So I guess then you would agree with me that one particle on the hand
Of
is
course,
an
Jim knows
insignificant
more.
amount.
Jim knows more because
I
Jim
can
is a
just say that
family
it was
friend.
present. I can't tell you that it's insignificant. It's just there.
Yet you can say 38 is significant.
Because it's much more than you would expect on an item that wasn't in the vicinity or didn't come into contact.
It's just a funny name
with
for the gun.
An object with gunshot primer residue on it.
I mean, I named my
One
bow. I
particle,
get
I
it.
can't tell you
but-
when or how or it got there.
Bo Whoop was
Well, would
not
you
what I
agree that
had
three particles
in my
on a shirt
mind.
is an insignificant amount?
It's just 3 particles on a shirt, and it can be one of the 2 ways, or a combination of the 2 ways of being in the vicinity or transfer.
Oh no, he
Yet
spelled
you're
it.
comfortable saying 38
whoop,
is significant,
like
but you're
whoop,
not comfortable saying 1 is
whoop,
insignificant.
Insignificant implies that the evidence.
Oh, this is
itself
Jim's job, is to create
insignificant,
doubt.
But it's a particle of gunshot primer residue. I'm not going to say that it's insignificant evidence.
Well, should you say 38 is significant, or do you say there's 38 particles on there?
Significant
It should have been
implying that it's a large
objection,
amount, not that
speculation.
it's a small amount, but a large amount.
So is 3 a small amount?
Not in how many that we get
Yes.
normally. It's
We're
about
absolutely
average.
naming my pickle.
Now, in addition to the rain jacket, and I think that is item 173 in your lab, you were also provided a
Take
blue
it under
tarp,
consideration.
item 174. Do you remember receiving a blue tarp?
Yes, sir.
And after discussing the scenario presented by the witness with Captain Ryan Neal, you and he decided that there was no need to process the blue tarp seized from Almeida, correct?
Correct.
Why? Ask why. Why did they
Now, are
decide
you
not
aware
to?
that this witness was Shelley Smith?
Why did they decide not to test
I
it?
am now. I was not aware who the witness was at the time.
So in your conversation with Agent Ryan Neal, he says, don't worry about the tarp.
Objection to hearsay.
Finally, an objection.
The objection is sustained.
It is hearsay. But
After your
she's an
conversation
expert.
with
She's allowed to
Ryan
rely on
Neal
hearsay.
about what a witness had relayed to him, you in
Dr.
consultation
B
with
brought me coffee.
Agent Neal decided not to test the tarp.
That's correct. That was based on that the raincoat was balled up in a
thing
closet
is,
versus the
she's an
tarp
expert.
being folded in a container
So
and in place in a location.
she could rely on hearsay, and it could be also
When
to
you say balled
explain
up,
her
what do you
action,
mean?
not for the truth of the matter. So
I wasn't there, so I don't know, but that was the information. It was haphazardly placed in the bottom of the closet.
Okay. If
haphazardly.
it had been folded and placed on top of some other items in the closet, would that have made a difference to you?
I'm not sure.
It depends
That
what
would
the
have had
items
to have
are.
been a discussion
Was the item
between
Bo
the
Whoop?
agents and my management.
Have you seen all the photos of the search warrant where it was found and how it was folded or not folded, balled or not balled?
I've seen one photo.
The one that's in evidence here?
I'm not sure.
I don't know what's in evidence. Did you show her what's in evidence? I don't remember if that happened yesterday.
You were
or not.
informed from Agent Neal that, or you concluded that the supposition was that the firearm was in contact with the rain jacket, correct?
I'm sorry.
You documented that the supposition was that the firearm was in contact with the rain jacket.
They were trying to determine, I think, whether a firearm was in contact with the rain jacket, and that was a possibility given my results.
The thing is, we've gotten to
Now,
it's possible 6 different
You,
ways. And there again,
so
if there's more than one reasonable
remember what you
explanation,
did with the blue tarp?
they have to take the
Put it in
not guilty
storage and it's never been
explanation.
taken out again, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I don't know what happened to the blue tarp.
Did you ever have any involvement with the blue tarp after it was presented.
This
to
is
your
them going to
evidence
show,
lab.
No, I did not.
this is them going to show that it is a incomplete investigation, that they didn't even check the blue tarp because they didn't care.
The
This
rain
goes
jacket
towards sloppy investigation, which
did-
isn't her fault,
were,
but she's
you know
the witness on the
fingerprints were
stand.
taken off the rain jacket?
I don't know of any other
She's not a
analysis
fingerprint
performed on
examiner.
the rain jacket.
Would you have been able to tell if there'd been lifts for fingerprints when it came to you?
For gunshot
question.
primer residue evidence, the trace lab always gets it first because any other processes might remove the gunshot primer residue. So no other analyses would have taken place prior to ours.
Good.
Um,
That makes sense.
The rain jacket was slated, I believe you testified, for further DNA analysis.
That was what was on the outside of the box. Yes, sir.
And because of that, you and Agent Jamie Hall wore gloves and a gown and a mask.
Unlike the prosecutor.
We always wear gloves and the lab jacket, but the mask was added because of the DNA request.
Do you know the results of the DNA analysis?
I do not.
Are you the DNA analysis examiner? No. And even if she was, she couldn't testify to the results because it would all be hearsay.
Shown photos that were introduced in the evidence and of the rain jacket. And I just want to publish
She's got to be tired too. Just like what?
two more that were introduced in evidence. 438. Doug, can you put 438 on the screen, please?
Thanks, Doug. Do it, Doug. Y'all, I'm a little punchy this
If you
morning. I'm
have
a
it,
little
now it's
tired. I think the prosecution, if they're going to go with a theory of the case that makes sense at this
There we
point,
go.
they have to go with he's too
Agent Fletcher, can
clean.
you see that?
And
I
I don't know
can.
if that's a good theory.
What's that?
This is a page out of my case file that I prepared for my technical reviewer.
Case files
And
generally
as
don't
part of
become
my
evidence
information
in a
to
case.
keep with me. It's a picture of the packaging, the paper bag that the rain jacket was included in with the documentation on it, as well as the tag from the rain jacket labeling the brand of it, the size of it, and it also has our lab net information and the initials and date in which it was analyzed by the trace department.
Okay, the
They
bottom of
should
this, I
have
don't know if you can
tested
see it,
my
but there's
cousin
a
Vinny
date
for
of
GSR to show how easy
10/8/2021.
it is
Is
to
that when you took
transfer.
the photo?
He put himself in the
No, sir,
position
that's when
for
I
it.
prepared the
That'd be funny.
PowerPoint for inclusion in my case file.
Thanks. So Doug, if you'll go to the next exhibit, 439, please.
Are these already exhibits?
And there you've labeled manufacturer's tags. You see that?
We got
Yes, sir.
small rats yesterday too.
Tell the jury what size
We're now
this
going to go for mall rats
rain
daily.
jacket is.
It's a large.
Okay. And do you know this brand name? Kokata?
I had to look it up. I wasn't familiar with it prior to this case.
Do they make tarp-like rain jackets? Perhaps.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. You take that down, please.
Thanks, Doug.
One
Mall-
second, Your Honor, please.
Mall rats. I said, do it, Doug. Yesterday, I said, hell hath no scorn like a woman's. Hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn for Sega. My brain is already tired. Was it Colonel Mustard with Bo Whoop and the blue tarp? Look, we are so deep in the
Correct.
weeds that the jury's going to forget, but that's the defense's job. That's the defense's job, to make the jury
Good morning.
forget that, oh, we're on recross or redirect.
Mr. Griffin asked you about 38
Great. Keep it brief.
particles on the parka, poncho, rain jacket,
Brief.
the blue garment.
Yes, sir.
You asked about the 38 particles. That's what I'm responding to. Okay, well, I'll talk louder.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Jim, we don't know what a Bo Whoop is either, but you
Actually,
didn't
how
give a
many
shit this
particles were
morning.
on the garment?
In total, there were 52 particles. There were 14
The
that I
Bo Whoop is
confirmed on
the
the
funniest thing.
outside of the rain jacket, and there were 38 on the interior of the rain jacket.
And I confused myself yesterday. There were 13 particle lifts and 12 particle lifts, correct? And then out of that, you found the 52 particle characteristics.
It's very clearly not a poncho. I agree with you.
Correct?
That's correct.
It's,
And 38 of those were on the inside?
Yes, sir.
That's
I
what
think
he
they
asked you
call it
about.
a poncho
14
because
were
it
on the
doesn't zip.
outside.
Yes, sir.
And when you wear that garment, do you typically wear it inside's inside? Is that what it means?
I would think so.
I'm here for the flattery.
And-
Thank you. The inside goes inside.
And he asked you, is it a possibility that a firearm had come in contact with the rain jacket?
If the focus is on
And you said
Alec
it's
lying,
possible, it's
all of this is
Really
extemporaneous.
possible, isn't it? I mean, those numbers are unusual, aren't they? 38.
For the interior of a garment, I would think that they were unusual, yes.
And that's
Annabelle, I
common
like where your
sense,
head's at. The weed whacker is my favorite thing.
Well,
about
they're just
landscape.
not,
What is it? I'm sorry. But how do you describe that in your world, everyday living and in your?
I missed an
examining
actual objection.
How
The
do you
court is
describe the
sustaining
particles
objections today because the
inside
court is sick of their
of a
shit
garment?
too.
That you're supposed to wear
My
with the outside
speculation.
outside?
well, typically people wear their clothing right side out. And so if they're in the vicinity to the discharge of a shooting, that's where the particles are going to land.
On the outside?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Do we have a pause? You're at the podium. Stay there. We are very, very deep in the weeds. And if the prosecution's case is Alec is too clean, just move on. If Alec is too clean, he's obviously too clean, which either he cleaned up or he didn't
And
shoot a
Mr. Griffin
gun.
asked you about,
Those are the two options. So if you're going with
I think, a hypothetical.
he's too clean, just go with that.
His father's gun had laid on it and it was in a truck. Would the 38 particles inside of the rain jacket be consistent with a recently fired firearm being contained inside?
It could be, yes.
The particles don't walk from the outside. We're all aware
With a
that if it's
recently
laying on a
fired
gun,
firearm
the
being
particles of GSR
carried
aren't
inside of that
walking
rain
into
jacket.
the inside of the parka
Just inside the rain jacket. I
Jacket.
don't know that it matters
thing.
if you're carrying it.
Okay, right. You're very technical and precise. Okay. But if you were carrying it and you had a gun inside that rain jacket that had recently been fired, and you were taking it somewhere to hide it
You
or
did
transport it, would the 38 particles inside
all of this.
inside the
you did
rain
all of
jacket
this
be
on direct.
consistent with transfer from a recently fired firearm?
That is a possibility, yes, sir.
Trust the jury. You did all of this on direct.
And again,
Yes.
how did you describe those?
And if he had
38
checked on
particles
Paul
in
and
your
Maggie, he
world?
would have had much more GSR on him.
They're unusual because they're on the interior of a garment, and it,
Go ahead.
and it is a large number.
Unusual.
Oh, weird. He
because
cut
they're
her off.
interior of a garment
Shock.
and an unusual number.
Well, a large number.
Object.
The last answer for the record was a large number.
Yes, sir.
Further examination.
Just stop.
Very, very briefly, Agent Fletcher.
Anything's possible, right? Great.
What I gather, there's just a whole lot of possibilities of what could have happened, right?
That's correct.
The only thing you can tell us is what you saw under a microscope.
Yes, sir.
You can't tell the jury how it got there, right?
That's correct.
Or when it got there.
That's correct.
And, okay, and I forgot to ask one further question.
Outside the
A
scope of
rimfire
redirect.
Gun, does it produce gunshot primer residue?
Rimfire ammunition does produce gunshot primer residue. Some don't produce the traditional lead, barium, and antimony. Others do. It just depends on what type of ammunition is used.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gunshot residue gets everywhere. If
Call
it's
your
not
next
clean,
witness.
if it's not cleaned off, it stays.
All right, state calls Annette Griswold.
Okay. We are going to hear from Annette Griswold, Alec Murdaugh's paralegal. This should actually be interesting. What it has to do with the murder, we will see. How she spells her last name, we will also see. But this is Alec's paralegal. So this is one of the two who started pulling the thread of where Alec's money was going. Alec looks annoyed already. Maybe that's just me reading into it.
My name is Annette Griswold, Griswold.
Ms. Griswold, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay, thank you.
Good.
They have had no
If you
order
would
to
just
their
tell the jury a
witnesses.
little bit about yourself,
None.
where you grew up, and what you do for a living, please.
I'm now waiting for him to say, who are your people?
I grew up in Hampton, South Carolina, and lived there for the first 18 years of my life, graduated from Wade Hampton High School, went away for college at 18, ended up falling in love with the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Over the next 2 decades,
Charlotte's
I spent most of
lovely
that time
too.
in Charlotte. That's where I got married. And with the exception of a few years coming back to Hampton and a few years in Columbia for my husband to get his degree, that time was spent in Charlotte until 2012. My dad took ill and he wanted us to move closer to be near him, and my mom needed help taking care of him. So I moved home in 2012 after my father passed away. A few months after, I went back on the job search, and I'd been out of work for 2 months helping my mom. So I was looking for a job and ran into my friend's father, and he told me I should probably check the law firm. I found out that I had a school friend that worked there. So I reached out to her, sent her my resume, and she forwarded it to the right people. And 3 interviews later, I was working for the firm, and I worked as a paralegal and was hired to work for Murdaugh,
I bet they call it the firm.
what
Kinda like the
everybody refers
Royals.
to as PMPED.
I bet they call it
And
the
when
firm.
did you start working there?
July of 2012,
And when you started working there, who were you working for?
Murdaugh.
And the entirety of the time that you were there up until the time that he was no longer a partner of that firm, is that who you worked for?
That's correct.
So how long was that?
That was a little over 9 years.
Were you the only staff member that he had that was assigned to him?
No, we have, there's 2 of us that work for Alec. I've been with him, like I said, the 9 years. And then the other secretary was Christy Gerald, and she had been with him about almost double of what I'd been there.
Quickly describe for me sort of the division of labor between you
Yes,
and
2?
Christy Gerald, please.
I was hired to handle more of the larger cases that Alec had, where it's litigation law, and so it's personal injury for the most part, workers' comp, medical malpractice, premises liability, product liability, wrongful death, trucking cases. And so he wanted me to take over those bigger cases and handle those. And then Christy did more of the day-to-day stuff and the smaller files. Still just as important, but just smaller
Different.
files than the larger ones.
You had the more complex stuff,
I did.
the bigger cases?
Yes, sir.
Just quickly, how was
That
the
explains why he has
defendant as a boss and a lawyer? Just what were his typical work habits, and what was he like in the office?
Extremely intelligent when it comes to the law. I respected and admired that in him greatly. He didn't keep normal hours. He liked to float in
I feel
later in
attacked.
the late morning time or
I feel attacked.
early afternoon.
Same- I
We
mean,
always had
same.
a running joke. We never knew. We knew that he might not be there all day, but he would always show up right before 5 o'clock when we were ready to leave. So just, kept unset hours. Pretty, I sometimes referred to Alec as a Tasmanian devil, because when he walked in, no matter what you were doing, you were started spinning, because he was just coming through and, shouting everybody's name and ready to get work done when he was walking in the door. So it was kind of confusing.
Okay.
Let me ask you just a little bit. The jury's heard some testimony about disbursement sheets and how they work. And can you just remind them very
He
quickly?
definitely smiled about being
how
called
that
the
works?
Tasmanian devil,
Who prepares
'cause
the
it's true.
disbursement sheets, and how does that go about taking place?
After I find out that a case is settled, I go ahead and start getting my disbursement sheet ready, where I can kind of go ahead and expect what the deductions are that are going to come out of it. The attorney's fees, the expenses. Anytime you have Medicare or any health insurance, there's typically a
Well, she is
lien on that
definitely
money,
calling
and
me
we
out my
are
name.
required by law to pay it back. So I go ahead and start looking into all that, draft the sheet, and get everything on it that I know that I'm aware of. And then it goes to Alec, and he makes any changes he needs to. And then he would sign, once he signs off on it, I send it across to our accounts payable department, and they cut the checks.
Are you familiar with what is generally referred to as the boat case?
I am.
and that is the boat wreck that occurred around February of 2019.
Also,
Yes,
the way
sir.
she described
Are
Alec,
you aware that
I know a lot of lawyers that
the
work like that.
defendant was sued civilly in that particular case?
When
Yes,
they come
sir.
in, they're ready to go. They've
After the
already
boat
thought of
case
everything that
happened,
needs to
did
get
you
done,
notice
and then
any
they're out.
change in the defendant's demeanor around the office and about his work habits?
I did. He was more distant. Even when he was in the office, he was absent. It was hard to, he's always been hard to sit still and get answers from and to sign our documents and anything that we had put in his office to sign. But it got extremely worse after the boat accident. He was rarely there. And when he was, the door was closed and it was almost impossible for us to reach him. He was always on his phone. He was always dealing with something bigger than what we had going on.
Something bigger than
As-
what we had going on.
Time moved on into the early part of 2021. Did that even get worse?
It did. He would come in lots of times and he was just not his normal self or what his normal self used to be. It was just very tense and I don't know how to describe it. It's just, you could tell that it was the boat crash was weighing heavy on him and it was consuming his life almost, it seemed like. And he was just harder to
It was
reach.
consuming his life.
And there was a couple instances where I referred to him as having his ass on his shoulders because that's how I felt. It was disrespectful of me to feel that way and to say that out loud, but that's how I felt because he just wasn't himself with us anymore. He came in and it was just like yelled our names and just didn't treat us the same way he did prior to the boat accident.
Was the defendant very protective about anyone going into his office?
He was. There was often times where he would come in on a Monday and say, "Who's been in my office?" And we'd be like, "I don't know, probably the cleaning ladies." We have no idea. He was, it was very cluttered, very unorganized, but he said he knew where his stuff was, that it was organized in his way.
Don't attack me.
Jury heard
yes.
testimony about this. And
I
just in the
relate.
interest of time, I'm going to ask it this way. Over the years, in various cases,
If you touch
did
my
the
stuff, I'll lose
defendant,
it.
ask you to put disbursements to forge on various disbursement sheets so that settlement checks?
If
could be
anyone on this
prepared
jury has
from the
ADHD,
trust
they're going to
account?
be like,
They
yeah,
have that
and
right.
Yes, sir, he did. I can't remember when it started, but he told me, to put it on Forge. And me knowing Forge Consulting was a legitimate company, I would, on the disbursement sheet, I would put Forge Consulting. And he would say, "No, it's not Forge Consulting. If I wanted to be Forge Consulting, I would have told you Forge Consulting. I want it to be Forge." And I was like, "Well, I don't understand. Isn't the name of the company Forge Consulting?" And he told me that he described it to me. He said, "Think of it like Forge Consulting is the large company and Forge is a kind of under that umbrella of it." So he said, Forge Consulting is the big name. And then you have all different things they do, including Forge, which is more like a savings account than a trust.
So he would actually get you to change it from Forge Consulting to just Forge.
Correct. Even when across the street at the accounts payable department, they would write the check out to Forge Consulting. Lots of times I would have to reach out to them and say, "Hey, you wrote this to Forge Consulting. He says it needs to be Forge." And so lots of times they would have to change that.
And no one caught that?
Those checks that he would have on
Okay,
disbursement
come
sheets
on.
to get cut, made out to Forge, would he often talk to you about picking those up personally?
Yes, I would ask him if I could go ahead and mail it to Michael Gunn at Forge Consulting because he was our contact. And he would say, "No, you know what? I'm seeing Gunn this weekend. He's coming out to the farm, or we're going to meet halfway tonight and have dinner." He always said that he was going to hand deliver it. So I even got to where I would make file notes in my files. Alec took check to hand deliver because I was so worried that he was going to lose these checks. Because he was, a little aloof sometimes and, would leave keys in his vehicle, would misplace a few things. And so I was so worried that these checks were going to get lost and then we would have to do a stop payment and reissue the check. So I started making notes where I would remember that I didn't mail it, that it was actually hand delivered.
Because Alec left stuff everywhere.
He was telling you it was going to be.
That's
hand
correct.
delivered.
Yes.
Who was saying that?
Alec was.
All right, when you're talking about the defendant or Alec Murdaugh, do you see him here in the courtroom today?
I
She
do.
trusted
Can you
him.
point him out to the jury, please?
Yes, he's over in the, it looks like a navy blue jacket.
Your Honor, can the record reflect she's identified the defendant? You mentioned he would say that,
She
I'm
was
going to
trying to
see
keep
Gunn, I'm meeting him
him
halfway, we're going
getting
hunting,
his
things
job
like that. Tell the jury again, who's Michael Gunn?
Michael Gunn is,
Oh,
he's
the
our
chat
contact.
remembers
He's the
Creighton.
person we talk to when it comes to trust annuities.
Our
with
chat knows
Trust-
exactly who
with,
Michael Gunn
Forge
is.
Consulting.
And that's the real Forge, correct?
That's correct,
There's a few more of
Not
us
the fake
here.
Forge.
not the fake Forge.
Not the fake Forge.
Moving into the latter part of 2020, did you have any particular issue arise with a disbursement to Forge?
I
that
hope
caught
Gunn's
your
next
attention?
too.
I did.
Tell me about that if you would, please.
I was currently working from home. I had had surgery on Halloween of 2020, and I was working from home, hadn't come back yet. I was planned to come back to the office the following Monday. And on that day, I believe it was December 15th of 2020, I got a phone call from the accounts payable department. Nicole called me, and she's one of the ladies that cuts the checks and works for Jeannie Seckinger. And she told me that she had just got a disbursement sheet over, that Christy had sent over a disbursement sheet in one of my files. It
Yeah,
made
she
no
was
sense.
nervous.
She didn't understand it. And I was like, I was confused too, because I was like, why didn't he contact me to do my disbursement? Because I'm kind of protective over my files. If I've worked that file
Me.
the whole time, I want to finish that file. I want to work the whole process of it. And actually, the disbursement part is my favorite part of the file, because I want to be able to have that, be there when that client gets their money and gets that closure that they deserve. So I thought it was very
'Cause
odd
she gave
that
a shit about the clients.
Christy was drafting a disbursement in one of my files. And
This was the day you were off work.
that's correct. I was working from home, and I could have been reached, but I wasn't until Nicole reached out to me and told me.
Keep going.
She told me, she sends it to me by email or text. I can't remember. And I reviewed it, and it didn't make sense to me either. There was a line on it that said the attorney fees were going, or amount of it was going to Forge. And I didn't understand how that was happening. And I'd never seen him send attorney fees to Forge before. And so I didn't know that that was even a possibility. And so I called the office, and Christy transferred me to Alec, and I spoke to him and asked him about it. And he said, why did Nicole call you? And I said, well, she doesn't know how to write these checks out, because it doesn't make sense to her. She hasn't ever seen a disbursement like this. And he said, I'll take care of it. And so he said, I'll call Nicole, I'll take care of it. And so
Which I bet
I
was
remember,
because he never did that.
talking to Nicole later and say, so what did he say? What was the reason behind it? And she said, he said that they can structure their attorney
this is
fees,
all
and that's
hearsay.
what that check was for.
But it explains her
Did you have a
actions.
subsequent discussion with the defendant about that?
Oh, good. Open-ended
I did,
questions.
and he told me the same thing. He said it was something that they've been able to do forever. He just never took advantage of it before, and so now he decided that he was going to start structuring those attorney fees where it would make have interest drawn. And so it made sense, because why not? Why not, instead of having that money sit somewhere, put it somewhere where it's going to draw more
Sure.
money?
His explanation to you made sense
Yes, it did.
on its face.
Yes.
Do you remember the name of that case?
So you found out it was.
That was the Hirschberger case.
I'm going to show you. Stand by.
So again, they're getting to Alec lied about everything to everyone, but they haven't made that a clear through line. We're getting bits of that, but they haven't
We'll show
tied
you
it
what's already been admitted.
together.
The evidence states 429, and see if you recognize this document.
Yes, I do. This is the disbursement that was in December of 2020 that I was talking about.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Put it up on the screen.
But I've got a question. If she wanted to be there when clients got their funds, what did she do with the files where they didn't get their funds? Because we know he stole them. I've got questions about that.
How
How
that
that
one
works.
time, we're in December of 2020. Is that right?
That's correct.
After the defendant gave you that explanation that seemed valid to you on your face, did that matter just kind of go away at that point in time?
It did. It was kind of, always at the back of my mind because I still felt like there should have been some kind of paper trail, but yeah, the explanation worked that he gave me. And so I was trying to just go along with it because I thought it was valid.
As we move on into January 2021, did another incident happen that came to your attention as related to disbursements?
Yes, the end of January, it was a Friday afternoon. I left early that day to take my mom to the eye doctor, and kind of the same scenario of kind of an exact repeat of December happened again. Nicole from Accounts Payable called me, and I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Well, I've got another one." And so Christy had drafted a disbursement in a case referred to as Moore. And she had sent it over. And once again, it had the same wording and kind of confusion that the Hirschberger one had a month previous. So she didn't really understand it again. Still, she was still trying to say, I feel like we need more information on this. And I said, I do too. And so
That's when they
kind of
started
the same
asking
scenarios
questions.
before. I reached out to Alec, he reached out to Nicole, and ultimately the checks got written. But it was the same scenario, as you can see on here. The $91,867.50 was attorney fees that were structured that went straight to Forge, to the fake, what we now know was the fake Forge.
All right. And is that still in the Hirschberger matter you're talking
That's
about?
the Hirschberger one. And on the Thomas More one,
We'll
it
get
was-
there in a second.
okay.
When you got that call, do you remember where you were, the second call?
yeah, the Thomas More, I was at the eye doctor with my mom.
All right, I'm still on Hirschberger. Do you remember where you were on that?
Oh,
second?
I
We're
was
still-
home.
we're
I
still
had
on
had surgery
Hertzberger?
and I was home recovering.
Creighton, we moved on, buddy.
And I'm going to
Devlin, thank you for the gift of memberships.
show you this, and we're still in the same exhibit, that being 429. Do you recognize that at all?
Oh, Creighton's definitely going to ask, did you really know him?
Let me hand this exhibit to you.
Rob, he's absolutely going to ask that. Because he got an objection with one witness because it went to character. He's now had time to think about how he wants to respond to that. And he got a good answer with second juror who said, no, I don't think I really ever knew him at all.
Yeah, this is what we refer to now as the second Hirschberger disbursement. It was on the UIM portion of the case and liability
They
portion.
need to get to June 7th.
So once again, the PMP attorney's fees were routed to Forge in the amount of $83,333.33.
Ask if her dog is named Bo Whoop. The Bo Whoop shit was so weird this morning. And Jim's like assuming that we all know everybody
You'd
and
started
their
talking
daddy.
about
It's so
Thomas
strange.
Moore. Is that another incident that came to your attention? as
Can
we're
we just go to
moving,
June 7th,
into early
Creighton?
2021?
Yes, sir. That one, like I said, was at the end of January. Once again, I was out of the office. I was at an eye doctor with my appointment with my mom. Got the call from Nicole. She said it's the same scenario. But this time it was all the funds that was in client's trust, which was $125,000, I believe. And all those funds were being routed. That was attorney fees and client money that was being routed to the fake Forge.
And this was another one of your cases, is that right?
It was. So another situation where I'm out of the office. It's almost 5:00 in the afternoon on a Friday. Christy drafts the disbursement. Alec signs it. They send it over in my absence.
When these instances are happening that you're describing to the jury, where you happen to be out of the office, and these are your cases, right?
That's correct.
Happen.
And all of a sudden you're getting communications that the defendant is having Christie draft some disbursements. In any of these cases, was there anything going on that something happened and had to be done that very day that you just happened to be out of the office?
I didn't think so because in particular, the Thomas More case, we were working on the third party portion of the case, but there was also a workers' comp portion that another attorney was working on. And when you're working on a workers' comp case,
It just happened that she was out of the
if
office.
you settle the third party first, you can't disperse it until the workers' comp portion is taken care of, because workers' comp always has a huge lien that you have to negotiate for the client. So the money was supposed to sit there. It was my understanding it would probably be sitting there another year until the workers' comp portion of the case was settled. So those funds didn't need to go anywhere. So it was very odd that all of a sudden they're all sent to Forge because they were supposed to remain in the account, was my understanding.
Happy birthday,
You,
Amber.
Take pride in the work that you do on these complex cases?
I do.
Do you know your cases very well?
I'd say I do.
That
And
break.
Was there any reason of which you were aware that things had to be happening the day that they were?
I did. No, it definitely put up another yellow flag, and it made me think about the previous one that happened in Hirschberger in December.
These should be bright red,
Because
babe.
both of them were kind of the same scenarios, me out of the office, someone else drafting it. And not that we can't work in each other's files, we can, but it's easy to miss something if it's not your file. If I had to go in somebody else's file and draft a disbursement, I may not know that there's a lien or a certain promised medical bill or anything else that needs to be paid.
And
So
that might be the
that's
point.
why, to me, it's easier if somebody that's worked the case actually drafts the disbursement because they know all the deductions that have to come out.
I think we might have already jumped the
Was the
shark
defendant
with the financial
using the opportunity
crimes.
of you being out of the office to push these things through?
Yes, in hindsight, it was easy to see that the chaos, the sending it over at, 10 minutes before 5 p.m. was kind of
Dick move.
a part of that little hurricane, a little tornado portion, just
Get it
sending it
done
over
now.
when most people are gone, and it's just going to get done quickly and no questions asked.
That makes sense.
You said that the Thomas More line was particularly unusual because it was workers' comp and those funds couldn't be dispersed yet, correct?
Correct.
To your understanding?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever have a conversation with the defendant about why these funds were dispersed?
I did, and he explained to me that he had gotten permission that since the money was going to be sitting there another year, that they were going to send it to Forge and let it draw interest, and then that would be money that would draw interest on for the client as well as the firm because it was both portions of the money.
I'm going to show you what's already been admitted into evidence. It states 328. See if you recognize this document.
They just couldn't conceive of what was happening.
Yes, this is the Thomas
Judy, I
More
will be in Arizona for
disbursement that
Dave
I'm referring
on
to,
Friday.
that where the entire client trust amount of $125,000.
Do you recognize the signature down at the bottom of the page?
I do. Alex signed it where it says R. Alexander Murdaugh. And then where the client's signature is, that is not the client's signature. It's Alex's handwriting.
You recognize this handwriting from working for him for 9 years?
I do.
Are the examinations so repetitive because the jury can't take notes? No, I think it's because they're not confident in their case. If they wanted to be mindful of the jury, they would have demonstratives and summary exhibits and other things. I think they're repetitive because either they don't trust the jury or they don't trust their case, or they don't remember that they're being repetitive. I mean, all of those are possible. But trust the jury's heard what you've
Did
said.
the
and
defendant
keep
have
moving.
a case going on around this time involving Mack trucks?
He did. What we refer to as the Ferris case. We actually went to Columbia and had a bench trial in that case in January of 21.
And did you work on
This
that
is
case?
getting
some
to the Chris
extent?
Wilson
I did.
case.
Was that one of the ones assigned to you?
Yes.
Was the defendant the only lawyer on that case, or were there other lawyers?
No, there was two co-counsels that had brought us in. Wayne Ridgway was the first attorney that received that case. He reached out to Chris Wilson's office, and Chris joined the case as well. And then Chris reached out to our firm, and so now there's a third attorney, which was Alec, involved in it.
Ultimately, was that case tried before a judge?
It was bench trial, like I said, in January of 2021.
And did the judge issue a verdict in favor of the firm's clients?
Did, yes, sir. And the next month, I think sometime in February, we got a very nice verdict for the clients.
Happy birthday to all.
Who was going to be dispersing the fees in that once the money came in? Was that going to be PMPED, or was it going to be the other attorney's
Chris
firm?
Wilson's office.
Had the firm PMPED, had it accrued costs in the course of that litigation?
Yes,
Expenses?
yes,
And did you prepare those and send those to Chris Wilson's office, or how did that work?
I did. I put the totals in an email and sent them to, Alec wanted me to send him the totals by email, and so that's what I did. And then I guess he sent them to Chris after that.
All right. And then after that happened, do you remember what month the money came in roughly?
In May.
Well, let me slow you down. Once you've done that, when the money comes in, you said Chris
Are they
Wilson's office is
preparing
gonna be
their
handling that
cross-examination
disbursement, right?
at
Correct.
council table
What are you
right
expecting
now?
to happen next?
I'm expecting copies of the settlement paperwork, copies of the disbursement sheets signed by the client. And I'm expecting 2 fee checks and 2 expense reimbursement checks, because there's 2 cases. It was a case for the deceased and a case for his wife. So I'm expecting 4 checks total.
And you're about to say, and I cut you off, you said something happened in May. Did something happen related to the Ferris case in May?
Yes, I received by mail the settlement package from Chris Wilson's office, but all it contained was a cover letter and the 2 expense reimbursement checks. So I emailed Vicki Lyman, which is Chris Wilson's secretary, and said something like, "Hey girl, I
Judge
got
Abby
these
says
expense
hello,
checks
Honors.
in.
She has a
When can I
trial starting
expect the
today."
attorney fee checks?" And she replied to my
We've been
email
chatting
telling
about
me
this one.
that, excuse me, "Hey friend,
We've seen this
the
email.
attorney's got that money at disbursement." And I was really shocked because I didn't even know when the disbursement took place. I was never supplied copies of it or anything.
I would have been shocked too.
What's
I would have
your
been
thought
pissed if
when
you're
you,
touching my files. I would have been
When
pissed.
Vicki says that.
Don't
what
touch
do
my
you think
files.
may have happened?
Well, I called her and I said, you already gave the checks. I was like, I don't think we've received them. And she was like, yeah, they were done at disbursement in March. And so I asked her first to send me over copies of the disbursement sheets and where I could look at those. And then I reached out across to our accounts payable just to make sure that checks somehow bypassed me and went straight to into the client trust to their department. And they told me no, that they didn't have any such checks on the books either. And I was like, okay. So I assumed that they gave Elliot the checks and he's lost them. They're misplaced. They're
The jury's going to come
somewhere in
away
his
with
truck.
this, that there's
They're
a lot
somewhere
more
in a file
information
folder stuck and
about
just
this
kind of hid
than
away
there is
that-
about the murder.
and he's forgotten to give them to me.
Did you say that, Vicki? Like, come on, why'd you give
Yeah.
them to my
I said,
boss?
why? I said, why would you do that? I was like, why would you give checks to the attorney? Why wouldn't you send them straight to me where I can get them deposited?
Just let me take care of it.
I'm gonna
You're
put,
making my life
page
harder.
312 that's already in evidence, and this is the page marked date stamp 2371 for the
But the
record.
jury is going to see
up
how
on
much
the
evidence
screen.
they
Can you
have
see that on your
here
little screen? Do I need to bring
I
that?
can.
down?
I
vis-a-vis
see
the
it.
Can you
murders.
tell the jury what that is?
That is the email I was talking about where I told her I just got the expenses, but where's the fee? And she says, it's because your boss and mine and Liz's got their fees once they were signed, duh.
She's like, not duh. This is my file. What is happening?
Did you have a conversation with Alec at this point, or what did you do next?
I did.
So you called the finance in your own firm and said, hey, did we get this check? And they
Correct.
said no.
They said no. And
All
so I verified that. And then I asked Vicki, I said, are you positive? And she said, yes. And I was like, okay, I'll go see if he remembers where they're at. So he happened to be in the office by that time. His door was closed. I went in, he was on the phone, and I kind of kept checking and going back. Eventually I got to speak to him, and he was still kind of on the phone, but he was like, no, I didn't get those checks. And I was like, are you sure? And he said, yeah. And I was kind of back and forth. And I'm like, he said he didn't get them. Are you sure? And this kind of went back and forth for a few minutes, and over the course of the rest of the day. And I said, hey, he just told me that Chris was still holding those funds in trust. I was like, I don't understand. You say that they've been cut. I was like, can you send me copies of stuff? Because I don't see anything. And he's telling me their funds are in trust. And she was like, Annette, I know for a fact that the checks are cut. There is no money in trust. And the reason I know that is because when the checks were written to Alec, I knew it was a bit odd because they were written to Richard. They were written out to him personally instead of the firm. And I said,
They were written out to him personally instead of the firm.
correct.
Why did that stick out in her mind? Why did that stick out in your mind?
Yeah, that calls
Yeah,
for speculation.
Common sense tells me that the attorney fees belong to the firm, where the firm, I don't know, I didn't understand the complete breakdown until Jeannie went over it in her testimony, but I knew by common sense. that
Witnesses
the
listening
funds
to each
belong
other's
to the
testimony is
firm.
so weird.
And then once they do whatever percentages and everything they need to do, then the attorney gets his portion later. So I knew it wasn't right, that it shouldn't have never gone to an individual attorney. It should go to the firm as a whole.
When you asked the defendant, said, hey, Vicky says you already got those, and he tells you what?
He told me that Chris was holding that money in trust, that it had not been dispersed yet.
These two must.
Vicky's wrong.
She and
he
Vicky
told me
must have been
Vicky's
so
wrong. I
tired.
don't
It's
care
like,
what
well,
she's telling you, she's wrong.
What
My
was his
boss is
demeanor
saying
when
this.
you were inquiring?
Your
You know,
boss is
Just
saying
kind of
that.
like, just shooing me out of his office. Like, I don't have time for this.
These two were like, these fucking men.
after Vicky tells
My boss
you
says this. Well, my boss says that.
the-
Ugh.
it was odd because the checks had been
They
made
all
out
got
to
stuck in the middle.
defendant personally instead of the law firm. What did you do next?
I asked her, I said, are you sure? And she said, yes. And she said, yeah, it was written out to him. Well, first I was like, I'm sorry, what did you say? And I made her repeat it to make sure I heard correctly. And she was like, and then kind of while she was saying it out loud, I think it kind of registered to her, oh, wait, that probably wasn't the right thing to do. Because she kind of hushed after that and didn't want to talk and kind of wanted to get off the phone with me.
Oh, get
And
there.
so I still kind of
break.
tried to question Alec over the next couple of days and tried to get a reasonable explanation of what was going on, because in my mind,
Well, there's no
I'm still
reasonable
hoping
explanation
he
for any
just
of this.
lost the checks, and
There's
this
a
was
reasonable
all just
explanation for just about
a
everything else, but not
misunderstanding.
this.
But at
Great.
the back of my mind, there's this huge,
We got you.
huge red flag telling me this
Yep.
is not right. What is going on?
Accurate. Correct. You are correct.
Did you eventually
Huge red flag.
take this issue
Correct.
to anyone else since you couldn't get an answer about it?
Yes, I eventually, I don't know the exact date, but I eventually emailed Jeannie Seconder and asked her if she was in the office because I really needed to speak to her. And she said she would be back later that day. And so I went into her office and I had everything printed out and kind of showed her and told her my concerns. And she was instantly on, excuse me, on high alert as well, because, it didn't look good. We were still both hoping that it was a misunderstanding, just this one-off, something silly that.
Oh, they didn't want it to be
happened,
what it was. They
but we
knew.
both had that nagging feeling of, this is not good.
Yep.
Something is definitely wrong.
Did Jeannie instruct you to do anything?
She did not. She said that she would talk to him about it, and she kept the paperwork that I gave her.
Yeah, I want to know if
Did
she
you
was
ever
worried
ask
about.
to send another email to Vicky asking for
retaliation.
particular documents?
Yeah, actually, it was kind of my idea. I kind of told Jeannie, I was like, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't you send me an email telling me what we need, and then I'll forward that email from myself, and, to see if we can get copies of everything where we can figure all this out and eliminate it. Because, at this point, we want to prove that that suspicion we had was wrong and that everything's really okay. So she did. She forwarded me an email, and
I'm still on states 312. What's been bait stamped is 2374. And is this the email that you just described that Jeannie forwarded to you requesting the documentation for the Ferris fees?
it is.
We've already seen
underneath
these
where,
through the other witness, though, Creighton.
Yeah, Jeannie texts there or emails there and tells me exactly what she needs and kind of is very specific.
At what time, what date was that? I'm sorry.
That was May 27th at 11:40 a.m.
All right. And then
I'm
going over to
spicy 'cause I'm
2373
tired and
the
it's
same exhibit,
repetitive.
Is this
We're now in cumulative on
email right here that
cumulative.
you then
It's
forwarded
just
to Vicky Lyman at Chris Wilson's office?
Yes, it was,
Ugh.
I forwarded that email that Jeannie sent me on the same day, May 27th. And I knew she was on vacation, but I went ahead and sent this to her. And then when I knew she had time to get back from vacation, I sent this follow-up on the Strand on June 2nd and requesting it again.
And
I'm here for the financial trial when we get to it. I'm ready to see
did
it.
you get a response email
But
from
this is,
Vicky Lyman and Chris Wilson's
they're not
office?
trying
Yeah,
to
she
prove
said
the
she
financial
didn't,
crimes beyond
this
a
doesn't
reasonable
involve
doubt.
her, and she said she would forward it to Chris.
And they don't need this much
And we were
detail to run
basically
up to
just
June
asking
7th.
for
They
copies
don't.
of everything where we could clear this matter up. And, like I said, we wanted our suspicion to be wrong.
Of course they did. Then what happened on June 7th or June 6th, whatever day they decided that they had to talk to Alec, talk about that day, talk about the day he was talked to, talk about his response afterwards, and then move on. The jury is going to see how much evidence you have here, and they're going to juxtapose it with the other evidence in the case. And they're going to be like, huh, sure wish we had a little more clarity on the other things, because the financial crimes is all that's been clear. But you can't bootstrap a murder trial into a financial crime. And if you do bootstrap a murder trial into a bunch of financial crimes and he's convicted, if that happens, when they appeal it, there's a lot of room to argue that this was too much. They're photos of text messages. Someone just say no. Say no.
I'll show you what's been marked as Exhibit 440 to your testimony. And again, just tell me, first of all, just if, without going into any content, whether or not you recognize that particular document.
I do. It's a text strand between myself and Vicki Lyman.
And is this, what is the date on that
What is this?
particular text
Hearsay.
strand?
June 2nd, and then it runs into June 3rd.
And is that 2021?
Yes, I'm sorry, 2021.
Is this a text thread where y'all are discussing the things that you described here today?
Yeah, I told her I just, don't mention anything.
Hold on just real quick.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Y'all are describing what we're talking about here today?
That is correct.
All right, Your Honor, this time I would move stakes 440 into evidence.
How is this not hearsay?
You want to object on hearsay
Yes.
grounds? It doesn't fall within an exception? to the
Yes.
hearsay rule?
See the document.
Agreed. Thanks, Jim. It is a text conversation that's being offered for the truth of the conversation. I don't see how else it's being offered. And what you can't do is offer outside of court statements for the truth of the matter that's being asserted. It's
Sustain the objection.
yes, because it's fucking hearsay.
Did you ultimately text Vicki on that particular day?
I did. I told her that when I gave her time to
Also
get back
hearsay.
from vacation, and
Jim.
I just basically texted
Jim.
her with my concerns and told her how stressed out I had been over this situation and how I was hoping my suspicion was wrong, but I was really stressed out. And unfortunately, my daughter, me and Vicki had talked on the phone. Vicki had called me as well, and unfortunately, my daughter had overheard me too. So she instantly got like really worried for me. And my daughter said, Mom, you need to go ahead and get your resume, because once you turn all this in, they may fire you.
Hearsay, even if it's our own text
So she was
messages,
very
because they
concerned
are
for me.
out of
This,
court, non-sworn
Latest email on the
statements
screen, that was June 2nd, 2021.
without an
That's
exception.
correct.
There are exceptions to that
Recall
rule,
June 7th,
but not in
2021.
this circumstance.
I do.
Was that a Monday?
It was.
Were you at work that day?
I was.
Oh, Golden Girl, this is why I can't
Did
sit in
the
a gallery.
defendant
I'd be
come to work that
screaming.
day?
He did. He came in probably around lunchtime. I can't remember if he came in before lunch or after, but somewhere in that time frame.
Did you see Jeannie Seconder that day?
I did. Jeannie had already told me that she was going to talk
Hearsay.
to Alec about the Ferris fee checks that were missing. She was going to go and talk to him about them that day. And so she asked me to let her know when he got it to the office. So when he got to the office, I reached out to her to let her know.
That makes
And
sense.
did she come up to your area?
She did. And we have open style offices, no doors on the secretary's offices. So she had to pass by me to get Alec's office. So I saw her when she was walking past.
Did she give you any look when she walked past?
She did. It was kind of just like that, just kind of a raised eyebrow, like wish me luck, here goes nothing kind of look.
Well,
Like
that's a no fuck look.
hope, because we were both just, like I said, wanting to get answers and
Get answers about what?
about those missing checks and figure out what was going on.
Where did she go after she gave you that look?
I heard Alec's doors closed, so I assumed in his office to talk to him.
This is what day?
This is June 7th, 2021.
Did she come out after?
She did, and she didn't stop. She just hurried by my desk and she went on about her business.
Huh.
Did you have any conversation yourself about the Ferris fees with the defendant that day?
Don't recall having any discussion with him on that day.
What did you see him do next?
At that point, I turned, Jeannie had everything and it was kind of in her hands.
What time do you think you left work that day?
I left at 5:15 that day.
Is that your normal time?
It's not. I typically work later. Alec always tend to work nights, and me and Christy tend to kind of adapt his schedule a little bit and work a little later than 5 o'clock. Most of the time, we were there till 5:30, 6 o'clock.
When you left the office on June 7th, 2021 at 5:15, was the defendant still there?
He was.
You go home? Eventually went home?
Yes.
Just a normal night?
Yeah, I went straight home that night.
Did that change at some point?
Yes.
I don't know how any of this is
Definitely,
relevant.
My phone was on silence, and I slept through a bunch of text messages and calls. I woke up in the middle of the night and my phone was just full, and I was like, what is going on? And so I'm looking through the text messages. They don't make a lot of sense. I see I have a voicemail message from Randy Murdaugh. And so I checked the voicemail, and I could tell he was upset and crying. And he said, Annette, please
That's all
call me
hearsay.
when you can. It doesn't matter what time. And so
It explains her actions.
I don't
but
remember what time it was, but it was sometime in the middle of the night, and I called him. And he told me, well, when he answered the phone, he was upset, obviously. And I said, Randy, what's wrong? And he said, it's bad, Annette. It's real bad. And I said, oh no, Mr. Randolph passed. And he said, no, it's not Dad. It's Maggie and Paul. And I said, what? And he said, they've been shot and murdered. And I said, what? And it was very overwhelming. We both cried on the phone with each other. And obviously the first thing I did was say, oh my God, how is Alec? How is he? Is he okay? Where's Buster? Is Buster okay? I was very concerned. I had a million thoughts running in my head. I was like, are you guys safe? Is this something aimed at the entire family? And I was very, very worried about Alec and Buster and
people
Randy
thought the
and his
family was
family
being
and the
targeted.
entire Murdaugh family. So it was very overwhelming.
Over the 9 years of working closely for the defendant, did you also get to know his family, Maggie and Paul and Buster?
I did.
Did you ever really know him?
Is this firm pretty tight-knit?
Yes.
What was the reaction of the people in the firm to this terrible news?
There was two reactions. First was scared. We were like, please lock our doors. We're scared. Who is this aimed at? Is it a client retaliating?
She's going to give all the possibilities of who's mad.
Alec, is it aimed at the firm? We didn't know. We just had so many questions, no answers, a million thoughts running through our heads. We were just there, supporting each other and helping one another through this grieving process. And at the same time, we were very protective over Alec and Randy. We wouldn't let them leave the office if strange cars were driving around. We would say, don't walk out yet. There's a white car that's went around 3 times. I mean, we were in complete mama bear mode. We didn't want them to go out and have to talk to reporters. We didn't want them to have to run out and run into anybody. And we were scared for them. We were very protective. I mean, anything suspicious out the window, we were on high alert.
Which
What
leans
kind of mode?
Mama bear mode,
Mama bear protecting who?
protecting Alec and Randy.
which leans towards the defense saying people wanted to retaliate against his family.
That-
I believe her 100%,
Law firm,
but that's not
community
helpful to the
rally to
prosecution.
the aid of the defendant?
They did.
Was that the primary focus on everybody's mind in
Oh,
the aftermath?
absolutely.
Were you at all concerned about finding out what happened to these Ferris fees after that happened?
What Ferris fees?
What Ferris fees?
Yeah, what Ferris fees? And that was the
And
furthest
that's
thing on my
the
mind.
answer from the prosecution. That's the answers they want. What Ferris fees? We didn't care anymore. We were protective of
Fact.
them. We were scared for
Was that
them.
the last time
Everything
you really thought
stopped.
about it in any aspect until September of 2021?
It is, yes, sir.
Everything stopped.
And you were more focused on helping this defendant and his family in the aftermath of this tragedy that had happened.
Yes.
Info Channel said, a perfect time to ask if Alec hired security. It is a perfect question.
And everybody was so supportive. I mean, some of our,
There's no question pending.
the associate attorneys stepped up and they came up to me and Christy and said, hey, you know, if you need anything over the next few weeks, you need us to review a file for you, get something else, sign it and get it out the door. We're here for you guys 100%. So it wasn't, you know, we were supportive. And then we had other folks in the office that were coming up to us, supporting us as well, because they knew we were at a standstill. What do we do? You know, because we knew obviously he was not going to be the same and not be himself for quite a while.
It's
I
fair.
asked you earlier about the boat case. Before the murders, when the boat case happened, had there been some reaction and backlash in the community against the defendant and his family after the boat case?
Yes, it was very difficult because Hampton being a small town, we all know each other and we all know
we've
both
learned.
sides for the most part. For instance, Mallory Beach, her father is my first cousin. So Mallory Beach, I was kind of felt like I was in between a rock and a hard place because, you know, her family is, you know,
Your family.
beyond heartbroken over the loss of her. And I know some of them didn't like the idea that I was still working at the firm.
I'm
But
sure.
I was still, to me, it was two separate entities. This
Wow.
is my job. This was my family. And I had to keep them separate. I didn't want any
That's
part of
hard.
the boat wreck case. I didn't want to know any details or anything because, like I said, I was keeping my family life and my work life separate.
After the murders, you said the law firm
That's
community
hard.
though rallied to Alex's aid, correct?
Absolutely. Everybody.
Did the larger community do as well
Yes, they did.
after the murders?
Yes, sir.
And I imagine, and what we've seen is that the firm is one of the best jobs going in the
You
area.
mentioned that after those murders happened.
So I
what
get
Ferris
not wanting
fees?
to
They were
leave
far
your job.
from your mind, correct?
Yes, sir.
When did they come back to your attention?
September 2nd, it was a Thursday in the afternoon, and I was looking for a file in the file cabinet, and I was unable to locate it. And lots of times if, you know, Alec's talking to a client on the phone, he'll yell for a file and we'll take it to him. So I was like, oh, it's probably in his office. So I went to his
What's that
office to
like?
look for the file. And when I found it, I picked it up. And when I did, a check kind of floated like a feather to the ground. And when I bent over to pick it up,
This is a
I
soap
saw
opera
the
at this
check
point.
and what it said and
It's-
had on it, and I instantly became very upset
It's a soap
because
opera.
it happened to be one of the checks from the Ferris case that didn't exist.
And what did you see
Fluttering
on
to the
check
ground.
that let you know that stuck out in
Fluttering.
your mind?
It was
To
from Chris
the
Wilson's
ground.
office. It was written to Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
And I bet it
And at the
did.
bottom, it said Ferris fees.
And
And it was dated March.
so what did you realize at that
I
point?
said, he's been lying this whole time. He had these funds. He lied to me. Oh, that feeling in the back of my mind was correct. Unfortunately, he did take these funds because when I flipped the check over, I also saw that he
All
had
the red flags were like,
deposited by mobile deposit, and I can't remember if he signed the back of the check or if it just said mobile deposit only.
Let me show you States 313, see if you recognize that.
We'll show
It's already in
you.
evidence.
Yes, sir. That's the check that I found on September 2nd.
Right. And if you flick up one side and the other side,
Yeah, it's got his signature, Bank of America deposit only.
you recognize that writing as the defendant's?
Yes, it is.
okay. That we could have gone to just what happened on the 7th and this and had enough context. But it's just wild. Okay, Creighton, the jury has seen this check. You're not trying this check. We're not convicting anyone over this check.
When that check fluttered down, you picked it up?
I
You
did.
saw that? Where did you take it? And did you take it anywhere?
Yeah, I went back to my desk and you can imagine all the emotions that I was feeling at this point. You know,
That
I was hurt. I was angry. I just was beside myself. And I was a bit enraged too, because I asked him so many times. There were so many times that I felt like we could have clarified this and got it taken care of. But here it is from March to September. And I find this check that supposedly did not exist. And so I
lied.
I went to my desk, I called Jeannie and I was like, I just found something. And she said, oh shit, what did you find? And I said, are you busy? And she said, come on over. And I went over and closed her door and threw the check at her. And she was like, is this one? I said, yeah, that's one of the fares checks that doesn't exist.
She looks torn.
Was Jeannie doing
Torn.
anything else or start doing anything else when you came down with that check?
I didn't know it until I took her the check, but when I took her the check, she was like, yeah, I just ran a report yesterday. And she said, one of the attorneys is going to call Michael Gunn later today. And I said, well, what do you mean? And that's when she told me that she thinks there's some more stuff too. Back to my suspicion with Hirschberger and Thomas More, she pulled a report and she found out that we may have other issues of stolen funds.
Crumbling down.
But I was not aware of any of that. I didn't know that she was looking into it again. I didn't know any of that until I took her the check and she said she had just started doing stuff within the last few days.
And that was September 3rd then.
Within a few days of this happening,
September 2nd.
what happened to
September
the defendant's employment at the law firm?
He was fired the next day.
3rd. Forced to resign. I
And
guess.
did the law firm engage in a review process to determine the extent of any alleged?
Yes, we've had months upon months of going through all of the files and finding, just following the numbers and making notes on everything. And
Following the money.
lots of hours, lots of manpower involved in this process of putting everything together, and just in awe of how much was happening, and we had no idea about it.
And without going through all the exhibits.
Thank
we've gone through
God.
Jeannie Seconder, but she was the one, or one of the central ones in doing that review. Is that
Of
correct?
course, yes.
And without going through each one, is
Thank you.
a lot of those disbursements for the fake forge account, those were disbursements that the defendant told you to put on there?
That's correct.
Are those, a lot of those disbursements, one where he corrected you and said, no, don't put Forge Consulting, put Forge?
Yes, they were.
A lot of those checks, ones where he said, oh, I'm going to see Michael Gunn later. I'll take the check myself.
Yeah, they were all for him.
We want to see Michael Gunn later, Creighton. Thanks. I mean, if he's going to testify, he's probably sitting in the courtroom listening to this, but we'd like to see Michael Gunn testify again. I think we've talked about him enough. We need to summon him forth and have him as the next witness. We're going to go through financial crimes all day today, y'all. That's what I think. I think we're going to be doing this all day because we haven't heard from Chris Wilson yet. We haven't heard from Michael Gunn yet. No text messages, Creighton. They're all hearsay. You know that. I want to see Cousin Eddie too, but I don't think we're going to get there today. But we need Tinsley, and we need the new guy from Palmetto, and you can't get to Eddie Smith until you get the Palmetto guy. So we need Gunn, Palmetto State Bank, Tinsley, Chris Wilson. We need at least 4 witnesses at a minimum before we can get to Cousin Eddie. So I think that's what we're doing today. Alex, well, I'm sure guilty on these financial crimes. Yes.
441. Again, without going into the context.
Should plead to some of those after this, but we got to get back to a murder
text
case.
message that Alex sent to me and Christy on September 26th when he was in 2021, when he was in rehab, is my understanding.
All right. Your Honor, this time I'd offer States 441 into evidence, I believe without objection.
No objection.
Because those are Alex statements.
Your Honor, I apologize. We do have the 403 objection and subject to the court's
Yes,
prior
yes,
ruling
yes.
on this.
I haven't seen the exhibit. I don't.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you go to the jury room for a break. Please do not discuss the case.
Okay. The court's getting ready to go on a break, and we'll answer some questions. Michael Gunn is the real Forge gentleman, not the fake Forge gentleman. The chat could explain more about who Michael Gunn is, but the chat is gonna be thirsty. Yes, I'm using the same joke again. It was good the first time. I got to say it again. Look, there's over 30,000 of you here. It's a different viewership. We can make the gonna be thirsty joke more than once. The chat loved Michael Gunn the first time he testified at the 404 hearing. So the court is not on recess yet. They just let the jury go to the room for break. I'm curious as to if the court has anything to say, if the court's going to let this in, if the court, it seems like the court is evaluating this text message to determine. Can we have volume back?
Yes, sir, Mr. Griffin.
Just preserving our prior objections on 404B evidence under 404B and 403.
We know.
It's nothing new. I just forgot to state
I don't think
no
he has
additional
to.
objections than what we've already had in this line of testimony, which is this is the same line of testimony of financial
I don't think he needs to restate it.
misconduct. That's all.
Mr. Waters.
And I just clarified, I think, with defense counsel that he was not adding a specific 403 objection to that. It's just the prior objection. However, this is a text from the defendant to this witness in this particular instance.
That says,
Certainly it can be read and then there's no hearsay issue because obviously it's a statement of a party opponent. And it certainly also is relevant because it can certainly be read in the nature of an admission to the various things that are at issue in these particular proceedings.
the murder
For that reason, and there's certainly the probative value of an admission is certainly
To the murder?
I would argue is the probative value of that is not substantially outweighed by the danger of any unfair prejudice.
I worry it's about the financial crimes.
It introduces another issue, the issue of drug use, and I think the witness testified that he was in rehab. Is that what you said? That he was in rehab and sent an email, and
That's already come in. Well, no, because when Chris Wilson and the other witness talked about it, they were at the 404 hearings. It's hard to keep straight what was in the 404 hearings, and they talk about the drug use in the 404 hearings. But the court's being careful, which is appropriate.
and just want to be clear from the defense that the part of it, of the testimony that establishes through this witness that he was in rehab, that is not a basis for your objection.
We do have, yes, we do object to evidence of his drug use and to be included in this, and we would ask that that document be redacted to the extent it references rehab at this time.
It doesn't specifically mention drug use. So have you all review the exhibit and tell me if you have no objection based on the fact that he sent it while in rehab, then it's admissible as far as your prior bad acts.
Or
objection.
she can say he sent it and not say he sent it while in rehab and leave it alone. That is possible. Yeah, they brought up that he was on pills after, and then they clarified like sleeping pills and anxiety medication. So I don't know what the court's going to do with this, but the other stuff came up during Chris Wilson's testimony of Alex saying, I've had a problem with pills. I've had an opioid addiction. That came up during Chris Wilson's testimony outside the presence of the jury. And we have had like 404s, and now we've got a fraud trial inside a murder trial. So it's a little
We don't have
confusing.
any additional objections,
to
Your Honor.
parse.
We would, because this does raise additional character if you ask the court. We ask that the court give,
The court said character could come in,
at some point.
and then the prosecution.
The character in that he saying he's getting better, or what part addresses character?
Certainly he says I'm getting better every day, and I mean, it's clear from that he's in rehab.
Redact that out then.
That's all.
Redact out, I'm getting better every day.
Ms. Waters.
Redact it.
Your Honor, I mean, he doesn't expressly say that. I would point out that the
Redact,
issue
I'm getting
of,
better every day.
Of pills has already come up a few times in this trial. I'm not trying to go there, but it is, when we talk about 404 and res geste, it is kind of part and parcel.
No,
A lot
Creighton.
of things. I mean, even the
No,
defense has
Creighton.
examined, I believe, Ms. Seconder on the issue of pills. And on top of that, we had Chris
You don't want
Wilson,
that in,
who
Creighton.
testified in camera, who will
No.
also testify here today. One of the
Oh,
things
good.
he says when he had that confrontation with the defendant on the the afternoon, I believe, of September 4th, that the defendant said, "Yeah, I've been stealing money." And
The
I've
upper
been
camera is
hooked on pills
frozen.
for a while. So This is a bridge I think we have to cross at some point. The state is not trying to gild the lily with that, but at least with these various witnesses, it is part
It doesn't
of what
help
they're
you,
being
Creighton.
said. As far as that specific exhibit, though, Your Honor, there's no express reference to drugs or anything like that, and it certainly is in the nature of admission. And again, I think for that reason, it's very probative and very relevant. And
Creighton, you don't want any of his drug use in. You don't want any of
My
his drug use
concern
in.
obviously is that we do not, or that I do not allow testimony involving these admissions to bleed so far into the character 403 that it has the effect of undoing the 404 analysis.
Yes, Your
a lot
Honor.
of testimony has come in unobjected to
Yep.
that touches upon the defendant's character.
He's telling the defense to object more. He's
That's
telling
why I
the
wanna be
defense to
clear
object more.
on what the objection is.
just from the state's perspective, we are trying to
He said gild the lily. We'll talk about gilding the
walk
lily
that
later.
line. I mean, there's a lot of the financial stuff we're not even seeking to admit. I think that we've limited it to things that had that connection that we discussed in camera. So, I'm not trying to gild the lily.
I'm
Gild.
not sure what that means.
That's a phrase I learned from Chief Justice Toll over the years. I guess that means piling on, I guess, is a way to do that. And again, I don't have, we recognize the situation we're in and trying obviously not to get out over our skis from what the admissibility of
Now we're out over our
the court has already
skis?
ruled on.
I'll ponder it while we take our break, and we'll be in recess for about 15 minutes. Ma'am, you may step down. Do not discuss your testimony.
Oi. 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 This morning. This is where we're at. We're at gilding the lily. It was so many analogies at the end there. He's like, I'm not trying to gild a lily or get out over my skis. Great. Are you trying not to fumble the football either? I'm going to answer some questions. But when we talk about the drug evidence, I think it is an issue for the state. I don't think they want it in. I don't think they know that they don't want it in. But getting into the fact that he has an opioid addiction, A, is not probative in this case at all. And B, really, if I'm the defense gave press conferences talking about it when he was first arrested on the financial crimes. And if I'm the defense, I'd be like, I don't know. The defense knows this jury in this area better. I practice in Los Angeles, where if somebody has an opioid addiction, most jurors are going to be like, and like, it's not going to change their perception of a person. Attitudes may well be different in South Carolina. So all of this is said with attitudes may be different in South Carolina over what people are doing in their personal time or using or what have you. But if I'm the defense, look, this is more people that might want to harm his family. Let it in. Let it in. It goes to their theory of the case that there were people after Alec. The law firm reacted as if there were people after Alec. And that is important for the defense. This last witness, who is still on the stand, said, we didn't know. We saw cars driving around the law firm and we were afraid. We were afraid people were coming for him. We were afraid his family was being targeted. We were afraid the law firm might be targeted. We were afraid it might be a former client. We didn't know who was coming after him. And that's really the defense's theory of the case, as far as we can see, that's the defense's theory of the case. So with that being the defense's theory of the case, let it in. Why not? Why not? I don't think it hurts the defense. I think it hurts the prosecution. Truly, I do. But here we're at with the defense trying to keep it out. They know their case better than I know their case. And we're here with the prosecution trying to get it in. And again, they know their case better than I know their case. But at this point, I don't know if I trust the prosecution much because they got so deep in the weeds again. They're so thrilled with the financial crimes that they are not tying it back where it needs to be. It's just. Let's get to some questions. We have a lot of super chats that we haven't gotten to. We've got a quick break and we're going to go through it. Elizabeth, if Alec Murdaugh was sleeping, wouldn't he hear the gunshots? We've had witness testimony that he would absolutely hear the gunshots. So we've heard that testimony from law enforcement who said, yeah, it would carry. We'll see if they even tie it back or get back to it because we don't know. But yes, the timing of all of this is something that's really important in the case. And what we haven't gotten to yet is how important the timing is because the prosecution hasn't broken down the timing well. So the timing is a big deal. He said he wasn't at the kennels and he clearly was. But if he was at the kennels at 8:44 and these murders happened right around 8:49, he would have heard the gunshots. And if he heard the gunshots, then he would have had to find the shooter with a gun in his hand to make his story plausible. Sorry, it's going to keep coming up in this trial. I'm not sorry. It's a perfect analogy. But that's where we're at. If the murders happen when the prosecution say that they do, his alibi doesn't make sense because he would had to have seen it, which is just as likely to lead the jury to he's involved, but he didn't pull the trigger. That is a reasonable explanation. It's like watching Oak Island. It's wild. Can the statements of this trial be used in his other cases, like his lawyers admitting his financial crimes during cross? His lawyers' questions are not evidence. These witness transcripts can be used in the other cases. The other cases, I think, will either get at some point lumped into a federal case or will get pled out after this case. I just don't see the financial cases going forward to trial. Maybe they will, but it doesn't make sense for them to do that. The financial cases are pretty bang on and they're pretty easy to prove. So I wonder if, well, it depends on what happens with this case. But if I'm Alec Murdaugh, do you want to sit in the South Carolina prison or do you want to go to federal prison on white collar crime? So if he's acquitted on this, I think we might see them looking for an indictment and pleading to that. I wouldn't be surprised. Question, if a defendant like Alec confessed to their lawyer that they committed a murder, are they still able to defend their client? Yes. Defense attorneys generally don't elicit that information, but defense attorneys need to be told the truth. Their obligation is not to prove someone innocent. The defense obligation is to make sure that the state proves someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And those are two very different things. The defense needs to make the prosecution do their job, fight back when the state doesn't do their job, fight back if there's overreaching, and try to find doubt where it lies. They don't have to prove anything. So no, they still go forward. And I know Natalie Lawyerchick talks about that. Some, I'm sure Runkle has talked about it. Some. Question, wasn't Paul's truck found on the side of the road and was actually driven by Uncle? How did lawyer yesterday find it, the mechanics, and see the video? I am still confused by that. So, Laura, I don't know what day he went to the mechanics. It wasn't clear to me if he went the next day, but yes, the car was found and processed on the side of the road, but I'm not sure which car it was. There are so many trucks involved that yes. But Laura, it's a very good point and a very interesting inconsistency with a witness that we genuinely liked yesterday. But it's odd. Which car was it? Bo Diddley, Bo somebody? I don't know. No, Bo Whoop is the gun. The mechanics office, we also didn't know. The defense attorneys are talking like we all live here and we know the place, and like the jury does too, but they don't ever tie it back. I forget the name. Jimmy Butler's. We got from Jimmy Butler to Bo Whoop. I don't know what happened, but yes, it's good. Kristen said lost and fitting for the jury too at times, I'm sure. Well, thank you. And I'll take the compliments always. But yes, it's like the TV show Lost. We got lost somewhere in the weeds and now we don't know. There's probably numbers involved. I came into this saying guilty. They haven't shown me that he is. I am changing my mind. And that's again why when I talk about this case, we absolutely talk about it with starting at, is the prosecution proving this to me? Not what do I think, but is the prosecution proving this to me? And right now, I'm still confused. And if I'm still confused, I can imagine that a jury's still confused and kind of bored. We're 3 weeks in, and there's no tangible through line on this testimony. The clearest testimony in this case has been on the financial crimes and the theft from clients, and that is a problem for the prosecution. A big, big problem for the prosecution. I've listened to it 20 times, and I think he's saying he did them so bad. Oh, this goes back to last week with the in-car interview number 2. We still haven't heard interview number 3. We're told it exists. I think he knows or hired the person that killed them and knew when. I think that's, at this point, I think that's possible. Since Jim was in the HBO documentary flapping his gums, isn't he a witness? I mean, he was there for a lot of the stuff, but no, he's not really a direct witness. Has he made himself a witness in his own case? I think so. They are all confusing me. Yes, new series coming up on Netflix too. Of course it is. We're just going to watch the real thing, and then we'll compare and contrast how the media covers it versus what we see happening in court. It'll be interesting, because that was interesting in Depp v. Heard. I didn't quite expect the vast difference between the media coverage and the court coverage. I haven't watched a lot of coverage. I've done some conversation about this case on Court TV and elsewhere, I haven't had time this week. So it's just been like, no, I can't. But I haven't watched a lot of the coverage. It'll be interesting to see what the talking heads think, and if they're watching this trial as much as we are. We're watching it, and we have watched it every single day. We saw the end bit of jury instruction or jury selection, and then right into opening statements. So it's weird Harpootlian has been so silent. This was a great question, Brandon. Is it because he realized the court was irritated with him? Possibly. This is also a long and exhausting trial. Harpootlian is, I think, in his 70s. So I don't understand why they're not leaning into the dude with the dark hair and the beard that has been doing the tech stuff. He was actually really good and had some really good questioning. And I don't know why they're not leaning in to him being the one who's doing some more questioning. Jim is really carrying it, but I also think it helps the defense to have less attorneys talking. It gets very confusing with the state to constantly have a different attorney jumping up and down. So I'm not surprised that Harpootlian's doing less questioning, but yes, the judge was very annoyed with him. Do you think Buster sitting further back is him trying to distance himself after emotional testimony yesterday? It could be anything. It could be when he walked into the courtroom. It could be not wanting to be on camera as much, and it's sitting a little further back, making it harder for the camera to zoom in on his face. It could be a lot of things. So I don't know. Question, why haven't they mentioned the clothes Alec was wearing in the Snapchat video from earlier in the evening? I don't know. Seems like they would. I don't think they have them, but it's going to stick out to the jury what's going on with these clothes. And if the state doesn't tie up those questions, leaving the jury with questions means you're leaving the jury with doubt. Questions, where are the clothes? I don't think they have them. Remember, when they went to go search the house that night, that their search was more like a looks aroundy. They had Alec's brother following law enforcement around. They didn't serve a search warrant. There were 20 to 25 people in the house. They didn't move anyone out of the house, and they just kind of went and looked around real quick and looked under the hey, Dr. B, and looked under the beds and stuff and looked in the drains, but didn't do any testing or anything. Question, did they not say there was only a 6-hour window to collect and test GSR? To collect the items of GSR, not to test, but to collect GSR from hands. From clothes, it lasts much longer. So the 6-hour window is from hands, but the examiner preferred a 4-hour window from hands because she said it transfers so easily, it's like gone. So that is what it is. Did you text me, Dr. B? I see you in here needing things, but did you text me about them? You could have texted me about them. Okay, thank you. Question, how can they find GSR years later, but in previous testimony, they wouldn't do a test on a person after 6 hours? I'm so glad we talked about this because a number of you have asked, which means there's confusion here, which again is the fault of the prosecution. But it's because on hands, it transfers off. So that time window is for hands, not for things like clothing and actual weapons, which I don't think you would test for GSR because of, and things like that. So that's the difference. Pickle is hereby named Pickle Whoop. It might be Pickle Whoop at the end of this. Gunshot residue not cleaned in years rusts a gun. My husband, avid hunter, cleans guns after every use. Shelley, and I think that's an argument that the prosecution is going to have to make, but they're going to have to get some evidence in that it is more normal for guns to be cleaned. Because remember, we still haven't heard what the stains on the shotgun are, if they are blood, if they have one of the victim's DNA in them, if DNA got transferred. Because here's the thing, if on that 12 gauge shotgun that they said there was a brownish red blob on, we have heard that it was collected. We have not heard that it's been tested. So we don't know if it's blood or not blood. If that comes back to one of the victims and they don't believe that that is the murder weapon, then Alec transferred DNA or blood or whatever, or could have, from one of the victims to that weapon. Now, if it's Paul and that's his gun, then that's less weird. He could have cut his hands hog hunting or whatever. But if it's Maggie, it's different. And so if DNA transferred because he was there and committed the murders, or because he actually did touch the bodies, then how is he clean? So there's questions. But they introduced that evidence 100 years ago, and they never brought in the analyst who actually tested it. So I'm sure everybody's forgotten about it. I still have an open loop of, hey, is there DNA on that? We haven't had the person who tested the DNA. We fell down the rabbit hole with a financial case. Sir Pickle Pickleby, we're going to have to put up a poll to name the pickle. You made me snort, laugh out loud, and I'm at work. You are going to name your pickle. I am going to name the pickle. We are going to name the pickle. I mean, we have to name the pickle. We named the goat. And the goat's name is great because the chat is Bay. I don't think I can travel with the pickle, though. The goat is Bay. And we named him Vincent Van Gogh because his ear fell off because I got flabbergasted. So he's Vincent Van Gogh. I will not, though, have the voice changer when I travel. That needs to be noted. I object. What the hell is he saying? Yep. Bo woot. I guess. It's like go you Huskies. I don't know. I don't know what to say about this morning. Alex, it's your birthday. You're going to party like it's your birthday. We have a lot of birthdays in the Law Nerd chat today. So to everyone who's in the Law Nerd chat having a birthday, happy birthday. I usually watch at 1.5 speed. I talk really fast. That I must sound like a chipmunk at 1.5 speed. Watching live sounds like everyone had a few shots before court and now they're unsuccessfully trying to not sound drunk. That's a very visceral image for me. I can actively picture that. My brain has stopped because I'm so tired. I'm right with you, punchy and exhausted. Yep. This trial, it's been a long 3 weeks. And here's the thing, I'm invested. I'm so invested, but I'm also angry. I'm invested and I'm confused. I don't want to be either. It's a trial that makes me want snacks, and I don't want to do that either. I'll take anyone asking questions today beside the Foghorn Leghorn crew enforcer, Vinny No Gloves. Yeah, attorney No Gloves is tough, but he does start with everyone. And at the beginning of the trial, I was like, oh, well, isn't that kind of folksy? But now I'm just like, sir, please stop asking everybody where they went to high school and tell me a little bit about who Allison is. Counsel, really? It's one of those things that just is wild to me. Question, if this goes awry and is found not guilty. I mean, I don't know if finding him not guilty is awry at this point. I don't know if they've proved it. What kind of time could he get for all the financial crimes he has against him? All. He's facing life in prison on all the financial crimes. So that's my other question in this case. He is facing so much time on the financial crimes. Why indict him on this? Why indict him on this? They've got to have more, but they're not showing me what they have yet. And we got to get there. I'm sorry, but doesn't the prosecutor look like Hopper from Jaws? Hopper drives the boat. This prosecutor needs a bigger boat, and he thinks that boat is the financial crimes. It's not. The helpful stranger, do you think he is actually trying to understand something, or is he trying to just hammer something home? Not getting it, to be honest. I think this, because of when it came in, is talking about the style of questioning from Jim Griffin. I think he's trying to like lure people in, like, I'm just here to ask questions. But he always does this. You're not here to testify this, right? You're not here to testify that. You'd agree with me that your manual says this. You'd agree with me that. He's trying to come off as not combative, and he's pulling out the nuggets that he needs. And instead of saying to the jury, oh, say that again, the way the prosecution is doing, they're just kind of collecting those nuggets to weave into their closing argument, because they can do that. They're the defense. They just need to poke holes. So they're keeping all of those little nuggets to poke holes at the end. The prosecution can't wait till they're closing to make this all make sense. They're going to lose the jury before then. The jury's going to be like, I don't care what you say by the time we get to closing. I have no idea what you're talking about. Googled bow whoop, and it's apparently a specific 12 gauge for duck hunting. Whether it was the real one or not, I don't know. Okay. Can we name all the Nintendo duck hunt guns bow whoop then? I still don't get how a man of his height touched the bodies and has no blood anywhere on him. He'd have to have kneeled. Yes, he would have. And this is where the lies are stacking up, and where I think the lying to work and the lying without care of how it impacts anybody. He's, with the financial stuff, has critically impacted his law partners. They are personally paying back his misdeeds to clients. They're never going to see their money back. They're suing him, but okay, good luck. I mean, the IRS and the feds and the state's going to come first on taxes. We don't know where the money is. It seems like he was in debt up to his eyeballs every which way. Could that money be offshore somewhere? Who knows? But he was able to effectively lie and cover and act like everything was fine, and persuade and coerce and wiggle around everything. And that was all starting to crash down. So it's interesting to see, but the lying is kind of the through line. But the prosecution hasn't effectively made the lying the through line. He lied about not being at the kennels, and maybe they will, but he lied about not being at the kennels. He lied about touching the bodies and trying to flip Paul over. He asked Shelley Smith to lie and say, if anyone asks, say I was here 30 to 40 minutes. And why all the lying? What are you covering? We saw at the law firm when he's lying, he's covering the financial crimes. So why lie about this? I don't know if that's going to be enough to convict him, though. The problem is that the prosecutor put us in the weeds. Yep. Agreed. Can you or do jurors reach verdicts based on their felony or gut? Is that ethical? I feel like he did it, but I'm not getting the evidence. There has to be evidence to support what they think. And that's why there's 12 of them to argue over it. So there has to be evidence to support what they're doing. All right. It looks like the judge is back taking the bench. Only one of the feeds is back. The other one is not yet back. So once he brings the jury, I'll switch feeds. He's got a ruling to make, though. So the gunshot residue got on the jacket from the forged check that fell out of the file. Got it. Yes.
Exhibit number
Facts.
441. I find that it is admissible under Rule 801 by a party opponent.
Okay.
However, the portion of it that says
Redacted.
When I get out of here is problematic. If the defense would like that portion of it redacted, that would suggest that he's in rehab, and when he gets out of here, he's going to do this or that. We can redact that portion. If the defense does not wish to have that portion redacted, the exhibit will come in its entirety.
Fair.
Your Honor, here's where we find ourselves on the defense side. His drug addiction and drug use is frankly res gestae to the alleged criminal conduct on the financial fraud. And it's hard for us on the defense side, and it didn't really get flushed out in our in-camera hearing because they didn't put evidence up of this, but it's something that we all knew.
Come in.
But it is part and parcel of the financial crimes, and it explains why he did what he did. And it does, in a way, pile on and make it even more prejudicial. And so when considering that, Your Honor, what we would ask is we want to renew our motion, object to all the financial crimes. Now that we know
You've already
drug
done
use
that.
is coming in the midst of it, because it is res gestae, it does tell the entire story. and we would ask the court to strike all the financial testimony the court's heard thus far, and let's proceed with the murder
Oh,
trial.
Jim, you're
That
gonna
motion is denied.
Jim, you're gonna
Thank you.
pull a muscle
But the
stretching that far.
portion- The court admits this document and will redact that portion if requested by the defense.
He's asking you
Do
to
want
request
to
it, Jim.
Redact the portion that suggests that he was in rehab. You says it's part of the res gestae. It may even be part of your defense. I don't know. The state is offering evidence, and
Jim's got to try it. I agree. He's got to try it.
Redacted. We would request that whenever we get in these 404B witness testimony, that the court provide a limiting instruction. Thank you.
well, I'm not going to give a limiting instruction
Every single
prior to
witness.
every witness's testimony or in the
silly.
middle of every witness's testimony. The court has given the
Twice.
limiting instruction twice, and will do so at the end of the case as well. And there may be other instances, but not at every juncture where evidence is being offered.
That's fair.
Yes, sir.
All right, so this exhibit is admitted.
They didn't ask for it to be redacted. The court asked the defense twice if they wanted it redacted.
You may bring the jury.
The wandering dick has moved over, and we may now bring the jury. Let's bring the jury. I'm gonna switch our feeds real quick while they bring the jury. And we forgot. We'll go with the music for the jury this time. Because we're bringing the jury. Yeah, Jim didn't answer. He didn't ask for a redaction. He said he objected to the whole thing. So, all right, let's bring the jury. There was another question I wanted to get to. What's 804? It is a rule of evidence regarding admissions of a party opponent. I can read you the full rule. Let's see if we have time. We have time to get to 804 before the jury comes out. Let's see. Here's all my hearsay. Do you see all my hearsay exceptions? Hearsay is rule 802. 804 is one of the exceptions to hearsay. So let us get to 804. I'm going to give you the exact language of it, because why not? What's the point of having the federal rules of evidence sitting next to you if you can't get to them? Exceptions to the rule against hearsay. Declarant unavailable when the declarant is unavailable. Let's see. The exceptions. Former testimony. Statement under belief of imminent death. Statement against interest. I think it's a statement against interest. Statement of a personal or family history. Statement offered against a party that wrongfully caused the declarant's unavailability. I think we're in the statements against interest because this is a statement of a party opponent. So that's where 804 comes in. But I think he actually said 801 party opponent. So that I think he said 801 for party opponent. We still don't have the jury. EDB, what's your guess on what's in Judge Newman's cup at this point? Coffee, probably coffee, and then switching to water later in the day. Pickle name Britney Spears. Ooh, that's clever, Hillary. I like it. Put his foot in it, saying the addiction was the cause. He did, but he said it's the context for the financial crimes.
Thank you. The objection is overruled. The exhibit is admitted.
May it please the court, Your Honor.
We've talked about Dilly Gaff. Dilly Gaff is a strong one for me as the pickle name. Is he trying to prove motive?
Very quickly, when we
Yes.
left off, states 441. now
Resuming
admitted into
testimony.
evidence. This was a text you received from the defendant. Is that right?
That's correct.
And the date
Let's
on
hear
that
it.
is September 26th.
September 26th, yes.
Is that 2021?
It is.
I want to hear it too. This I'm actually interested in.
Is this the text of that text that the defendant sent to you?
It is.
I only have a couple more questions for you.
Wait.
Before I
What's it say? Damn it, Creighton.
get to the end, one question I wanted to ask you was, what was the defendant's cell phone usage like?
He was always on his phone, always on his cell phone, always on his office phone. He would quit one conversation and grab another. Sometimes he would have both phones to his ear.
Would it be unusual for
Me.
the defendant to go anywhere without a cell phone with him?
Absolutely.
And that's getting to his phone being off during that relevant period while he's up at the kennels being very, very
Play for
unusual.
you.
And that's, I
been
think,
admitted to
strong
is
evidence.
States 297.
Have her read it. Have her read it.
Let me have the this input, please.
But I think that's why they're trying to get to that period of time when we know he's up at the kennels, that being turned off is strange. Read the text. I didn't know he was going to play the video. They're going to have her identify the voices.
Quick cash.
Both phones, she was referring to his work phone and his personal phone, his office phone.
Hey, he got birds now. Hey, Bubba. It's a kitty. This is a chicken. Come on, Cash. Quick.
They're going to have her identify the voices on the video. The more people that identify his voices being there, the stronger it is for the state.
Do you recognize any voices in that video?
I do. I hear three voices.
And tell me who you hear
I hear Paul Murdaugh, Maggie Murdaugh, and Annette Murdaugh.
and how sure are you.
I'm 100% sure.
Can I have the Elmo one more time, please?
I'm sorry.
He wasn't talking to you, but he's also confusing.
Going back to States 441,
Are you going to read it?
can you read just that one sentence starting where my finger's pointing that the defendant sent to you?
The worst part is knowing I did the most damage to those I love the most.
Oh, he didn't ask.
Cross-examination.
That's not about the murders, I don't think. We need context of the text.
Good morning.
And that text was sent before he had been
Ms. Griswold,
indicted on this.
were you hired by Alec to work at the law firm?
I was hired by the firm, but he was in one of the meetings and it was my understanding that I was going to be working for him.
Right. And so you interviewed with him,
I did.
and you've been working, you worked with him for
12 years. she said.
About 9 years.
Oh, I thought
9
she said
years.
12.
Yes, sir.
And one
9?
second left.
I think he left his notes on the table. Wrong legal pad. I actually like prepping witnesses with legal pads that way. But I don't know what he is doing.
My understanding is that you moved back to Hampton because your father was ill,
My father was ill. Yes, sir.
and then so you moved your family back, you and your husband, and
Right. My husband and my daughter and I moved to be closer to my dad and help my mom with him.
and you got a job working for the law firm. And did you work exclusively for Mr. Alec Murdaugh?
Most, yes. I mean, there was other attorneys that I might do some work for here and there, but primarily Alec was who my attorney was.
And if you needed to take time off for personal matters, would you just have to run it by Alec?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And he put family first at work, did he not?
Most of the time, yes,
And he encouraged you to put your family first.
absolutely.
And I think your husband had a heart attack. He was in the hospital for quite some time.
Yes, for 5 weeks before he ultimately passed away.
Oh,
And I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
But Alec encouraged you to do all you needed to do to care for him and don't worry about work. Isn't that right?
Yes, he did.
And you didn't miss a paycheck.
I sure didn't.
Is he a good person to work for?
It was hit or miss. I cared about him. I respected him. I loved him. You know, you can't be that close and work with somebody without having, developing feelings for them and their family members.
Right.
But it was hard to work for him sometimes. He was a bit erratic, and for all the respect and love I had for him, it was still very difficult to work for him.
I think your description was he was like a Tasmanian devil that would come through at the end of the day,
He would.
and he was frenetic.
Yes.
Okay, and but people came to him if they needed something, right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
And so he had a lot of people coming, and did he ever say no to anybody's request?
He didn't know the word no.
Right. And
He didn't know the word no
Well,
cuts both ways, because I think
he
we've seen a
would-
lot of evidence of that.
want to schedule his appointments around his family's commitments, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like if the Buster and Paul had baseball season, he'd be sure to block all that out off his calendar, wouldn't he?
Most of the time. Sometimes he didn't tell us about personal matters or things where they were going until the
We had to
day
fix
of
it.
or whatever, and we would have to reschedule stuff. But if it was on the calendar, yes, he was going to be there for anything that the boys had going on.
He put in his work life family first. Is that
Yes,
right?
that's correct.
You would agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that.
It'd be nice to have those choices at
And
work.
and
Part of the reason I started working for myself.
you got to know Maggie,
I
did you know?
did. Yes,
And
sir.
and she was thoughtful for you on your birthday and anything you had going on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think you mentioned the Ferris trial in Columbia.
Oh, they've gotten well into
That was in
character.
Columbia, wasn't it?
That was, yes, sir.
And you went to the trial, didn't you?
I did.
And you remember Alec going up on a Sunday, and he spent the night in the hospital because his dad was going to have surgery the next day?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it seems like it's been a
And then-
long time, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Maggie came up on Monday and stayed with him during the trial, right?
I never did see her. Our paths never crossed, because I was kind of in work mode, but I know she was
Fair.
there.
When you're in
Right.
trial, that's fair.
And he traveled frequently with Maggie on work trips, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
And he would take his family to conventions and when they would have work, right?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
And Alec wasn't the type of guy that would go off on a guy's trip.
Character.
His trips were
character.
family trips.
I mean, I don't know that without a shadow of a doubt, but I know a lot of his trips were family related, something with him and Maggie, or
If you don't know,
him
there's
and
no
Maggie and the
foundation.
boys and their significant others.
Right. And he was real close with Maggie's family too, wasn't he?
Yes, it appeared that they were very close.
And if Mr. Brandstatter's, Maggie's dad, couldn't get in touch with Alec on his cell phone, he would call you and ask, where's Alec?
Yeah, he would call myself or Christy and say, hey, can you get Alec to give me a call?
And they
I mean-
communicated quite frequently, didn't they?
They did.
That makes
And
sense.
did you meet Mr. and Ms. Brandstatter?
I didn't meet him until we had Mr. Randolph he got the, what
Order
was
the
it?
palmetto?
Yeah, and that's when I met them. That was the first time I'd ever met Maggie's parents.
The, and if Alec was in even a deposition, and if Maggie or Paul or Buster would call, I mean, he would walk out and take the call, wouldn't he?
I never was present with them. I've heard rumors of such, but I was never present with him
So
at
there's no
depositions
foundation.
and mediations.
Well, in the office, if he was in a meeting, he would always
yeah.
take their calls, wouldn't he?
Absolutely. Yes.
Never say, oh, gosh, tell her I'd call her back. He'd
No,
take her call.
no, he never put off calls with his family. He always talked to them.
Now,
Why is character being allowed on their side? Because the prosecution
you were
agreed to that
talking
limiting
about the
instruction,
night that you learned
even though the judge told them character was fine.
that Maggie and Paul were murdered.
This is all character testimony.
thought-
Agreed.
When you first got
But
the
that's
call that
on
it
the
was about Mr.
prosecution.
Randolph.
Correct.
This
And we're talking
is, you're
about
right. This
Randolph
is
murder.
character
That's
evidence.
correct.
Alex
All of you are
and Maggie's
right.
dad.
Yes, sir.
Because it was well known that he had just been put back in the hospital and his condition was not well.
Yeah, it was my understanding that at that point, the family was making arrangements to bring him home and hospice may be involved. And so obviously we were all expecting awful news.
And he in fact did die on Thursday, June 10th, I believe.
I believe so too. Yes, sir.
And after that, you said that, the whole law firm rallied around not just Alec, but Alec and Randy and their families.
Absolutely.
Okay. And that's
And we
what,
rallied around each other because we were scared. We were worried.
right. And then.
Wait,
then
no, ask
after,
her what she was scared of. Lean in to they thought the family was being
Well-
targeted, Jim.
I guess there was like a
Lean in.
tidal wave of media surrounding the law firm at some point in time, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And so y'all
At
had
what
to
point? Vegas to
be
time.
careful with comings and goings, and that was kind of scary, I think.
It was. We ended up having to lock the front door because they would just walk in and just overwhelm the receptionist. So it was
That's pushy.
became like a daily habit there for a few weeks. So we had to end up locking the door.
And as a result of Maggie and Paul's tragic murder, Alec Murdaugh became front and center of a media spotlight, didn't he?
He did. Yes, sir.
And it wasn't,
Okay.
and there were cameras outside the court, outside the office frequently, right?
There were. Yes, sir.
There were cameras out at Moselle.
I think so. I didn't go out there, but I'm assuming they probably were.
That
And
Lions Foundation.
all the buzz was about Alec Murdaugh and what happened to Maggie and Paul, right?
Yes, sir.
There was a scuttlebutt, Jim. Is that we're going with? There was a media scuttlebutt.
And
Is that where we're at?
all the while,
Why?
you were around Alec on occasion, and you noticed his demeanor, and he was grieving greatly, was he not?
Oh,
He was
that's why.
grieving and he was also very humble. He had changed dramatically. Afterwards, he was more mellow and he would come in the mornings and instead of yelling Christy, Annette, and telling us what to do, he would actually come to our desk and say hello and check on us, and we would in turn check on him. So he was very different after the murders.
And he had a hard time working after the murders?
Absolutely. Yeah. As you could imagine.
The
Sure.
defense wants to set up
And
that
you're aware,
change was
you
because of
keep
the
up
media
with his
attention,
whereabouts, but he spent a
not
lot of time with
consciousness of
Maggie
guilt.
and,
That's where they're going.
Maggie's parents?
Yeah, he would tell me that he would have weekend plans and I would hear him on the phone with his in-law and making plans to meet up for the weekend.
And he stayed in Somerville a good bit with Buster and with Maggie's parents?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
And
So defense is trying to give
he and
an
Buster
alternate
traveled,
explanation
up to the
for demeanor
upstate?
change.
to Lake Huey or something? Are you aware of that?
I remember him saying, the family had property or something up there, his in-laws, and they were all getting together.
And you're aware that Alec would not spend a single night after Maggie and
How
Paul were
would she
murdered
know that?
at Moselle.
Objection,
Yes,
Lions
sir. I knew
Foundation.
that.
How did you know
And
that?
when he was
Is there foundation
working
for
in
any of
Hampton, he
this?
was either commuting from Somerville,
So Alec didn't go back to
Edisto, or
Moselle.
staying with his brother Randy, or
That goes both
something like
ways.
that.
I knew he was either staying with family or, he was coming back from Somerville or Greenville from being with the in-laws, but that's all I knew.
But he never spent one night more at Moselle.
Not as far as I know, yes, sir.
Cuts both ways.
Now, you were asked questions by Mr. Waters about the Ferris matter was the furthest thing from your mind after murder of Maggie and Paul, right?
Yes, sir.
And that you didn't do any more about that after Maggie and Paul's murder, right?
That's correct.
But I think you also said that you conveyed your concerns to Jeannie Seconder and that she essentially took over.
This is part of the
Yes, when I
art
gave
of
it to her, I knew
cross-examination.
she told me she would take it from there.
The
And
questions are the
So I
art.
know I gave it to her and that was that.
And so there's really nothing more for you to do on the Ferris matter, because after you turned it over to the genie, right?
Correct.
So for all of you asking,
And
does
then
everything
you,
cut both ways? Everything but the financial crimes cuts both ways.
We're in this Alec's office one day looking for a file, and you
which is why we're here.
stumbled across this canceled check.
Oh no,
Yes,
it's
sir. It
floated.
must have been underneath the file I wanted in between that and something else. So when I lifted my file, it fluttered to the floor.
Fluttered.
And
Fluttered, Jim.
and you felt, I think you talked to this jury about how this whole thing put you in a bad spot, and your daughter said you need to dust your resume off or something like that.
That's
right?
correct. Yes,
That's the
sir.
retaliation they
I
were
was worried.
about.
I was hoping I was wrong. I was hoping that my gut feeling was wrong and that what I was looking at was not money being stolen and that he was not doing that. I was hoping I was wrong, but at the same time, I was
She knew she was
scared
right.
to turn it in because what if they, look into it and it's nothing, there's nothing going on and then, it disturbs the relationship we had working together and, what would I do? Would I be able to stay at the firm after turning him in on something so bad that he could lose his job over it? So I was concerned. I was concerned for my livelihood. I'm a single mom with a teenage daughter.
And
Fair.
nothing happened to your job, right?
No, sir, nothing happened to my job.
It's Alec who lost his job, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
The way this firm had
And,
her back is
You
it just
mentioned
gives
in
me
what's in
hope
evidence
for
as
humans.
defendant's exhibit number
Because this firm had her
441
back.
is a text that you received from Alec, right?
That's correct.
And was it just to you, or was it you and
Me and Christy, his other
Christy.
secretary.
the other secretary?
They protected
And the
her.
date is Sunday,
That's
September
not something that always
26th
happens in law.
at 4:30 PM in the afternoon.
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned it was from rehab?
Yes, as far as I knew, it was rehab. I assumed it was probably one of the steps of reaching out to those that you hurt and telling them you're sorry.
And Alec was in rehab?
Yes, sir, as far as I know, he was.
And I want you to read this to the jury, the whole email, if you don't mind,
Okay.
please.
Sure.
Did they just ask about rehab? Didn't we just go a long
Hey, it's
way to
Alec.
keep
I'm
that
finally
out?
feeling a little better each day. I'm over the worst, but still feel like I have the flu. Real weak. I have been worried about y'all, and I'm sorry I didn't get to tell y'all myself. I know both of you been hurt badly by me. I know it sounds hollow, but I am truly sorry. The better I get, the more guilt I have. I have an awful lot to try to make right when I get out of here. The worst part is knowing I did the most damage to those I love the most. I'm not real sure how I let myself get where I did. I'm committed to getting better and hope to mend as many relationships as I can. You both are special people and important to me. Please know how sorry I am to have made you part of my misdeeds. I hope you are doing as well as possible. I love you very much. Please tell Cheryl and Haley hello, and I'm sorry. All my love.
What?
Thank
What?
you. That's all the
What?
questions I have, Your Honor.
Anything further?
Rehab? The defense is like, all right, well,
Mr.
if the
Griffin
shit's
asked
going to
you
be out of the
about-
horse,
Whether or not you were worried about losing your job over
Shit's
these
out of the
Ferris
horse.
fees, is that right?
good
Yes, sir.
question,
And then he
Creighton.
asked you, the defendant lost his job, right?
That's correct.
After the murders, but before September, the defendant still had his job, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Lean into why she's
He
afraid.
still had his law license, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
You said in response to defense counsel's question that people came to him if they needed something, correct?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. He was trusted by everybody, and they knew that if they needed something, all they had to do was reach out and he was going to help them.
He was trusted by everybody. Did you trust him?
I trusted him. Yes, sir.
People came to him for anything, like all these clients right here?
Yes, sir.
That was dramatic.
He was a prominent lawyer,
Yes, he was.
one of the most prominent in the region.
Yes.
And all of that came to an end in September 2021, when all of that came out, did it not?
Right. When I found the check, I knew that he had lied to me and that he'd stolen that money.
Wow, Creighton.
Thank you. You may sit
Okay.
down.
That was a nice surprise. Got to the point.
You may call your next witness.
Chris Wilson, Gunn. Go with Gunn.
Johnny James for the state. State calls Michael Gunn.
Yay! I'm just keeping myself entertained at this point. Chat. I'm just going to remind the chat, this is a professional doing their job. So respectful for Forge Daddy. I know. I see you. I know. We're ready for it. Gunn will take us to lunch. It's going to happen. I see it coming. But all of us need to be entertained. I'm sorry, Mr. Gunn. It's been a long and winding trial. Thanks for the respectful thirsting, Chad. I appreciate it. Just keep the respectful thirsting. We kept the respectful thirsting.
Sure. So
For
Michael Gunn, last name is spelled Gunn.
for Dr. Curry, we can do the same.
Good morning, Mr. Gunn.
Good morning.
Just barely morning. Where are you from, Mr. Gunn?
From Columbia.
Born and raised?
Oh, grew up in Conway, South Carolina.
I grew up in Conway, South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Sir,
Where do you work?
Do you read
Work
books?
for Forge Consulting.
Do you read
And
books on tape?
what is Forge Consulting?
What kind of books?
Forge Consulting, we are a settlement planning firm based primarily in Atlanta. I run the
We
Columbia
have
or
a new
South Carolina
career
office.
for you.
And we work with people, plaintiffs and plaintiffs' attorneys, to help them really try to take the settlements that have been recovered for them and try to make them make these settlements last a long time. These people normally have been in catastrophic injuries or wrongful death of a loved one.
So your company works with law firms who represent people who've been hurt, and if they get a little bit of money to make them whole, you can help make that money last a longer time. Is that an accurate summary of what you just described?
Counsel,
Yes, sir, and that's the goal.
I'm going to need you to match his tone and
When did you
pitch.
first start working for Forge Consulting,
Counsel.
or do you work for Forge Consulting, or did you found it?
I'm one of the principals in Forge Consulting. We started in 2003. I've been there since 2005.
He's a founder of Forge.
And what is your actual, you said you're a principal, what is your actual title at Forge Consulting?
I would be a principal and settlement consultant.
Forge Daddy.
And so do you
That's
work
his title.
directly with the attorneys yourself and arranging some of these settlements and structures and things of that nature?
Yes, sir, I do.
Well, at least
So
it'll get us to lunch.
if you could, what exactly is a structured settlement in a summary form?
Sure, kind of a primer on it. Essentially, a structured settlement is when it's only available to those who've been, first of all, to those who've been injured or involved in a wrongful death or workers' compensation. It's really a method for them to try and save money. And what I mean by that is
Thank you,
when
Chad.
they get the
You've made my
settlement,
day.
they have an opportunity to put some of that money into almost like an annuity. And that annuity would pay them over time, much like a paycheck, because a lot of these folks have lost their jobs, they've lost a loved one, or they have bills to pay. And so by doing that, it allows them to receive that money, but not only do they receive the funds, they do receive them tax-free from the federal government.
Y'all here's my warning.
Totally tax-free.
Disclaimer.
Totally tax-free.
You're all
with
going to
interest.
want to buy annuities. I understand. Do not make financial decisions
Now,
until you've given yourself 24 hours
Who
after
actually
he's done
funds
talking.
these
Don't go buy
annuities that
annuities.
ultimately get paid out to those who've been hurt?
Sure. Well, generally speaking, the annuities are funded by the insurance company that's paying the claim or the defendant themselves. That's generally speaking.
And when they pay that claim, where does that money go in order to fund the annuity? Does it go to Forge Consulting?
The only way it would go to Forge Consulting is if the check was made payable to that insurance company, and then we would forward the check on to that insurance company.
So in that instance, you wouldn't actually be really taking the money, you'd just be stuffing it in an
We'd
envelope.
be a
and
mail
sending it on.
carrier. We'd just be a mail carrier, correct.
This is
And I
a mostly
apologize.
female jury.
We're both speaking pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
Madam Court Reporter can only record one of us at a time.
Don't cut him
So if
off.
I'm asking a question,
We want to hear
try
him,
and let me
counsel. I'm
complete it
sorry.
and
You're
then
not the
answer
star of the
those.
show. This is a mostly female jury.
So to
It was
clarify,
all picked up before
the
lunch.
only instance where you would get any money is if the check is made out to an insurance company, you stuff it in another envelope and send it on its way.
we don't need to be in court to
But
know what's happening
ultimately,
there.
the money comes from the insurance company to whoever's funding this annuity. Is that correct?
Generally speaking, yes.
And the people funding this annuity would be another insurance company or some other firm of that nature. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So this is going to go to the
So that
proper
would be the structuring
proper
of
demeanor
monies
of Forge, or the proper
awarded
work
in a
with Forge.
lawsuit to the person hurt. What about monies awarded to the lawyer in a lawsuit? What about an attorney's fees? Can those be structured?
They can be.
All right. And how does that process work?
It's very, very similar process. It's then a similar outcome. The difference is the attorneys would be deferring it, but when they receive the funds, they would have to pay the tax at that time. But it is a way to defer the taxes like that. But it's the same scenario. The money would have to come from the defendant and/or its insurance carrier. And there would also have to be language included in settlement documents, et cetera.
But it couldn't come directly to the attorney, could it?
No, sir, that would be constructive receipt, and the IRS would consider that taxable income.
Constructive receipt, and they would consider it taxable income. So can you explain that just a little bit more for me?
Well, if they receive the money, then the IRS is going to consider that taxable at the time it hits their account. And therefore, undoing that is going to be quite a bit of a problem.
You've got to be
So
careful.
then they would get
to not
taxed
get
on all of
taxed.
that money, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah,
As
that would
opposed to
suck.
just the amount of money that they wanted to get that year.
That is correct.
And you indicated that it would be deferred taxation. So to use an example, let's say I represent somebody on a big suit and get $1 million in attorney's
Chat,
fees.
y'all are making me laugh.
If I were to structure it, I could have that stretched out over 10 years, $100,000 a year. And then, am I hearing it correctly? I wouldn't get taxed on $1 million all at once. I would get taxed on that $100,000 a year each year for those next 10 years. Is that a good way of describing it?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
And as a result, pay less in taxes.
That's the goal.
We're going to have some things we want you to say. Can you please repeat after me?
Are you familiar with an individual by the name of Richard Alexander Murdaugh?
I am.
Do you see him in the courtroom here today?
I do.
Can you point him out for me?
Wearing a check shirt and a
Oh,
blue
I
jacket.
know.
up here.
I know y'all have been
Let the
bored.
record show
I get
that he
it.
identified Mr. Murdaugh.
We needed
When'd you
something
first,
that
meet
wasn't
Mr. Murdaugh?
looking at checks in this trial.
Probably 20 years ago, give or take a few years, 20 years ago, probably at a convention or a continuing education seminar, since our primary market are plaintiffs' attorneys.
As one does.
And what was your first impression of Mr. Murdaugh?
Very jovial, friendly, never met a stranger, just a, generally nice
That's
guy.
a very nice turn of phrase. Never met a stranger is a very nice turn of phrase.
Did you have occasion to work with Mr. Murdaugh more going forward from that point in time?
I did, as generally speaking, as we get to know our clients, a lot of times friendships get born out of that. And you get more comfortable dealing with them. And so, yes, I worked with his firm a great deal. Did
So
a lot
what
of work
has your
with his firm. I
website
probably
traffic been like since the
actively
last time you
probably
testified?
I've worked probably 5 cases with Mr. Murdaugh.
Is there an increased interest
Now,
in
in
annuities?
terms of those at his firm, did you
Questions.
work with Alec on a lot of cases or relatively few cases compared to his partners?
If you compare it to his partners, relatively few.
So most of the time you were working with the other folks at PMPED, but Alec maybe just a handful of times. Is that correct?
That's
That's correct.
interesting.
Did Alec hold any other positions other than his role at the law firm that caused you two to
Interesting.
work with one another
Sure.
frequently?
Sure.
because
One
Alec
time
was
he
stealing
the
his client
president
funds, they
of the
didn't go to
Association for Justice, which is a voluntary organization of plaintiffs' attorneys. And so we'd be very closely together at trial lawyer events and things of that nature.
Interesting.
And is there a shorthand for that organization that used to be applied to it, the
SCAJ.
SCAJ?
So he worked with Alec less than the other lawyers in the firm.
As
And
part of
I'm
your
wondering
professional
if that's
relationship
because
with
Alec
Alec,
wasn't
you know,
structuring
what sorts of
proper
things would
settlements
y'all
for his
do
clients.
together?
Again, usually these would be at events. It was never really a one-off. It was usually events, golf.
Oh, Connie, I
dinner,
see the chat. Y'all are
lunch,
making me laugh and I love it.
Things like that. Just, things that you would do when you're at a Hilton Head.
About how many times would you say you golf together?
Things you would do at Hilton Head.
I'd
Sure.
probably say,
Chad
put
that
the
knows
over-under
Hilton Head,
around
tell
15.
us. What would we do at
15?
Hilton Head?
And you'd go have dinner, maybe some drinks together at the conference, correct?
not every year, but we would see each other. Dinner was probably few and far between.
Did you ever go hang out with Mr. Murdaugh at Moselle or any of his other properties?
No, sir.
Did he ever come and hang out with you in Columbia for dinner or drinks or anything like that?
It would be business related.
Did you ever go to any sporting events with him, like a Gamecocks football game or anything like that?
I never went with him. I may have seen him there, but
Sir.
I never went with him. No.
Can you please say Gamecock?
There's a lot of folks in
chat-
the stadium at Williams
Quite a
Price on
few.
game day.
The chat needs to
Depending on the
know.
season.
The chat needs to know. Sir, why are we making Gamecock jokes? And why is he not saying it?
Did Mr. Murdaugh ever meet you in Columbia and deliver some checks to you and tell you, hey, these are for the clients for structures or anything like that?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever meet with him halfway between Columbia and Hampton and get checks from him?
Absolutely not.
And did you ever call him and say, hey, can you bring those checks to me so that we can finance this?
Absolutely not.
And would Forge, under any circumstances, accept client money checks personally in order to fund an annuity for them?
No, sir.
Chat. For the chat that didn't know, University of South Carolina are the Gamecocks.
So
We're not just saying Gamecock to
if
say
you
Gamecock.
received or saw or reviewed
Do they have T-shirts that say "Get
an
Cocky"?
instrument
I
made
need
out
know.
to Forge, and it said in the memo line, money for client or something to that effect, would that instrument be legit?
Well, it would be returned to the person that sent it to us with an explanation as to why we could not take it.
I'm just
You
going
would
to
not
say,
take it.
any
No, we would
smirking,
not take
smiling, or laughing on my part during this entire testimony is strictly due to the chat, because the chat is bae. They are more clever than I am, and they're very fucking funny. So I
In working with
apologize.
Mr. Murdaugh,
The chat is spicy today, and
Did
it's,
you
I'm here
ever,
for it. We need some spice.
discuss options with him about how to structure fees for his clients?
Generally speaking, we have those conversations with attorneys, and I do remember he inquired about it, kind of went through what you would need to do, how you would need to do it, kind of the process in which it's done. So yes,
So did you explain to him some of the things that we've explained to these folks from around the county here today?
it's the same canned elevator speech I give to everyone. This is how the mechanics of how it works.
Were there any specific cases that he came to you and asked you about whether you could set up a structure?
I don't recall if there was a specific case. I do remember there was a case where we sent some options over one time and nothing ever came to fruition. It was just, here's what you can do.
They
Do you
chatted.
recall the name Dion Martin?
I do recall the name Dion Martin.
What, if anything, do you recall about Dion Martin? Was that one of Alex's cases?
It was. What I recall about that case is that I got a signed option from plaintiff's counsel, signed by Mr. Dion Martin, or I'm assuming Mr. Martin, saying he wanted to set
I'm
aside X
assuming.
amount of dollars. Not really sure exactly what that amount was. And he wanted to do it to an annuity.
He thinks it might be
And,
forged. That's
so annuities,
interesting.
like anything,
That's why not.
it's kind of based off of stock market and whatnot, so they can kind of go up and down. So there's a time window in which you are able to purchase that. If not, the rate may go up, the rate may go down. And so I consistently sent emails to Mr. Murdaugh as well as his paralegal, Annette Griswold. I would say at least 4, maybe 5 emails saying, hey, this is going to expire. This is going to expire if you don't fund this now. And after getting no response, after multiple weeks, we just closed our file.
So you did open a file for Mr. Martin, correct?
We open a file for every case, yes.
For every case, and I want to drill onto that a little bit. What prompts you to open a file?
Well, part of it is so that we can remember if the attorney calls us and says, hey, I've got a case I'm about to start working on, or we got it, and they don't give us any information because they might be in the car, we can say, okay, this is the John Smith case, and I've got that tied to an attorney. And so that's how we do that.
So if you get
Makes
so much as a
sense.
phone call saying, I want to talk to you about so-and-so, you make a file,
That is correct.
even if it's just one conversation.
I always ask for a name.
Okay.
Do you ask for any other information?
I ask for a great deal of information, but oftentimes that takes a little while to get. But the name is what I need first.
I see there are reminders for the chat for everybody to say, stay hydrated. I appreciate it.
Are you aware of a boat collision that occurred in early of 2019 in relation to Mr. Murdaugh or his family?
I'm aware.
And are you aware of generally any litigation that resulted from that case?
I'm aware.
After that boat crash and that litigation began,
I'm very
did you have
interested
any
in
further
this.
conversations with Mr. Murdaugh about structuring any fees that he might earn?
We had general conversations, generic conversations, but we never had any in-depth conversations.
He never asked any specifics beyond the general canned speech?
It was, this is what you can do, and this is what you can't do.
Did he ever bring you any fees and say, hey, I would like to structure these or anything to that effect?
No, sir.
So this is all just getting to real forge versus fake forge and proving that the fake forge is fake.
Do you recall
And the chat needed something to do
in and
today
around
because
September of
this trial has
21,
gotten tedious.
2021, receiving a phone call from Lee Cope?
I do.
And what generally, well, tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Mr. Cope called me, asked me if he could trust me, asked if he could trust my office as much as he trusted me, let me rephrase that, and said, I'd like to give you a name of some cases, and could you tell me what y'all have done for those clients? He gave me probably 10 to 12 names. I remember I was standing in my driveway, so I'm furiously writing down these names, hoping I could read my own handwriting. And I got back with Mr. Cope and told him I didn't have a file open on any of these people.
None of them.
Not a one.
Not a single name that he provided to you.
No, sir.
Did they follow up with you and provide you any additional names?
They did. The next day, he called me again, gave me another list of names, went through that list. The only name that stood out was Dion Martin that I referenced earlier.
Did they ask you about where Forge Consulting did its banking?
They asked me if we banked at Bank of America, and I told them we had not for the last 4 years.
Was it the last 4 years or was it a little bit longer than that?
It was 4 to 5 years, somewhere in that range.
Yes, y'all. Mr. Gunn is staying hydrated, and that should be a reminder to you to stay hydrated, chat. I know you need to quench your thirst. It's all right. I've got a Stanley
I
tanker
jumped
of
ahead
water.
a little bit.
Why are we jumping ahead? If you're going to go through check by check with any witness,
Generally
just do
aware
it with
of
Mr. Gunn and let
the
him
events
read
of
the check numbers.
June 7th.
We've already jumped the
2021.
shark
Is that
so
correct?
far. Might
Yes,
as well
sir.
let him read everything in.
When did you first become aware of the murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh?
Probably early morning on June 8th, probably 5:36 in the morning. I got a couple of phone calls, a couple of missed phone calls.
What did you do after learning of the murders?
That's early.
Other than being stunned by it all, I let my wife know, called a few other people. I let
Sorry,
my business
Chad.
partners know.
Did you reach
Mrs.
out
Gunn,
to
no disrespect.
anybody in relation to Mr. Murdaugh or Mr. Murdaugh himself?
I did reach out to one or two of his law partners, just to express my condolences, and obviously asked them, hope it wasn't true, but that was confirmed. And then I waited a day and reached out to Mr. Murdaugh and just let him know we were thinking of him, didn't have the words for what to say.
That's fair.
Had you ever met Paul or Maggie?
I have.
Because
Did you know Paul very well?
how do you reach out?
I
What do
didn't
you
know Paul
say?
very well. I knew of him, but I didn't know him very well.
Like, what do you say to somebody? I never know what
How
do
well
you say?
did you know Maggie?
I'm here.
I knew Maggie, pretty well. She would oftentimes, I believe when Buster was in school in Columbia, she would text me and ask me where he could get his hair cut and where he could get his pants hemmed and things like that. And I was kind of like her local Google. So, but it was funny because I'd always respond to her.
We would call you to be
You're
our
in
Google
Columbia,
too,
Buster's
sir.
in Columbia, she's in Hampton, and so she's texting you with questions.
Absolutely.
We would call and ask you where to get our pants hemmed.
Did
too.
you attend the funeral for Paul and Maggie?
I did.
Did you see Alec there?
I did.
Did he say anything
Hi,
to you?
Fred.
Not at the funeral, but after.
What did he say to you after?
Did you go to a wake afterwards?
I did.
Did he say anything to you at the wake?
He told me how much Maggie had loved me and my wife and our family.
Counsel, stop reading off your list of questions. Listen to the answers and then ask the follow-ups.
Between that wake and September of 2021, did you see the defendant, Mr. Murdaugh, on any other occasions?
I saw him in Hilton Head in August. That was the only time I saw him.
Where did you see him?
At the Skage Conference in Hilton Head Island, the annual convention. That's all attorneys and vendors and whatnot attend.
But at the lawyers' convention in
Yes,
Hilton Head?
yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Was anybody with him?
His brother John Marvin was with him primarily, but others were around, law firm members of the firm.
What was the scope of your interactions with Mr. Murdaugh at the convention?
We hung out a little bit, or said, exchanged pleasantries, hugs, still, couldn't believe what had happened. And we did go to dinner. I went to dinner with him, his brother, and the majority, I don't want to count them off, of his law firm on, I believe it was Saturday evening.
So we're now in August at the legal
Now, we've
conference.
talked about.
Did he say
Forge
anything?
Consulting.
Otherwise, why does
Are there
this
any
matter?
subsidiaries of Forge Consulting or alternative names or other companies associated with Forge?
We do have two other companies that are under the Forge umbrella. One is Advocacy Trust, which is a Trust Company, and another one is Advocacy Wealth Management, which manages just, it's a veteran SEC-related wealth management firm.
Do you have any stumbling over my own tongue. Do you have any subsidiaries that are just named Forge?
No, sir, we do not.
I can't. That was it. That was it. I'm broken for today.
Did you ever
So is the chat.
tell Mr.
sir.
Murdaugh that
So is the
he
chat.
could use the name of Forge Consulting or Forge for his own purposes?
Absolutely not.
I can't.
Prior to September of 2021, did you have any knowledge that Mr. Murdaugh was using the name of Forge for his own purposes?
No, sir.
Fred.
Back my own reports and all.
I'm dead. There just is. He's even stumbling over Gunn. He absolutely is. The prosecutor's like, which is too funny. Real Forge, fake Forge. We've got Real Fred on the desk today. Real Fred says hello. Real Fred doesn't want to look at the camera at all. Real Fred, you just want to cover me with cat glitter. I am now covered in hair from Fred. All right. I can't compose myself. I am a child, and this has been a very arduous trial. And so moments of levity in an arduous trial are sometimes needed, just because. We need Captain America next. We've earned it. If we don't see Captain America, I'm going to be very disappointed. Kia ora, Emily, from New Zealand, 6 a.m. on Thursday. Kia ora. Remember to wear a mask on the plane. I've got COVID and it's everywhere again. Thank you for the reminder. I have my mask packed. Oh, we're taking a stand break. Your Honor, you can't do this to us. I guess we're taking a stretch break while they look for their exhibits. I like that the court is mindful of giving comfort to the jurors to make sure they can stand up and stretch a little bit. So there's that. We're just going to answer some questions. If he loses its tie, it's over. I mean, yes. I'm disappointed he didn't say Gamecock. There was an opening there. I don't even remember what the Gamecock joke was, but they definitely wanted to talk about it. Yes, there are shirts that say Get Cocky. Of course there are. There have to be. It's very confusing when you're talking about USC versus USC. I'm a Southern California kid. So when I think USC, I think Trojans, not Cocks. So it gets confusing for me too. Emily, can you shout out again when you start to talk about the murder case? I will. I'll let you know. We'll air horn or something when we get back to the murder case. Woodstack Daddy, Gunstack Daddy in one tweet. It's just...
It's already in evidence of State's Exhibit 335.
They couldn't find it because there's 400 items of evidence. Wait,
This
441.
document says it's a Bank of America statement. Is this an account statement from a Forge Consulting account?
No, sir, it is not.
Okay, great. No, it's not. I have 2 orange tabbies, one named Fred and one named George. I'm sorry, y'all. Chat, Google doesn't like my joke, and I see it grabbing the comments, and the chat's moving really fast. I don't think the mods will be able to take care of it because it's going so fast. So I'm sorry if Google swooped your comment.
A Murdaugh, Sole Prop, DBA, Forge.
Sorry.
That's not one of your accounts?
No, sir.
I made the
No
joke,
further
and
questions for this witness.
Google's pissed at me for making
By
the
the
joke.
defense.
Jim, what could you possibly want? Unless you're going to get him to say our list of buzzwords.
Afternoon.
You had some formal positions with the South Carolina Association of Justice?
Yes, sir.
What were those?
Did some government affairs lobbying work for them,
Okay, you on a contract basis?
and as an employee and as a contractor.
Okay. At one point in time, Alec Murdaugh was the president of the South Carolina SCAJ,
Yes, sir, he was.
and were you employed at the time or contract lobbyist?
Yes, sir, I was employed at the time, yes, sir.
And part of his duties, well, I guess he was on the board for a period of time as well, right?
That's correct, yes, sir.
So he's well
And,
respected and still stealing. This-
SCAJ
Jim,
board and the president would meet in Columbia quarterly Monthly, how often?
They would meet in Columbia probably
He fooled
twice a
everyone.
year. They normally met at the convention spots or the CLE spots, and then one was always by telephone. But usually the president was, even the telephone call, the president would come to Columbia.
And when he would come to Columbia, you remember Maggie would come with him and spend the night on those business trips?
Sometimes, yeah. I don't know specifically for for the Skage stuff, but I do Maggie spend the night in Columbia, yes.
But you saw them traveling together in Columbia. I mean, you said you would see him in Columbia on business reasons. Was the business reasons his
Speculation.
I would say, generally speaking, most of the time when I would see him, it would be because of that, yes, sir.
And then he and Maggie came to you and your wife's wedding in New York, right?
They did.
And my understanding is the big day came.
Were you there
on the
too,
day of
Jim?
The big blizzard.
3 feet of snow, yes, sir.
And so you had to delay the wedding a day, right?
Objection.
And you got to spend a lot more time with Maggie and Alec.
And
During that period
all
of
the other guests, yes, sir.
Right. And so,
Great.
and at that point in time, your wife became friends with Maggie and y'all became pretty good social friends?
I think so. I mean, we still didn't really hang out much after the wedding other than professional settings, and that could have been just because of the distance between the towns. But yeah, we keep in touch, no doubt.
And then every year, I think you mentioned, there's an annual convention
This
at
is
Hilton
going
Head.
to character
of the-
again.
We used to call it trial lawyers, but
I still do too.
yeah.
Did they
of the
change their
trial
name?
lawyers, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's usually at a hotel. It used to be at the Westin at Port Royal, I think.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
I think maybe they moved it. I don't know.
Marriott now.
Yeah. So,
Okay, Jim.
and there
I
there'd
don't know
be
what happened to the camera.
seminars, during the day, and then there'd be socializing in the evenings.
Yes, sir.
And it was a family event.
Very much so.
And Alec would bring Maggie and Paul and Buster.
This
Every
is
time.
this is
And you
character.
got to see him interact with his entire family.
I did.
And he was a family man, wasn't he?
By all accounts, yes, sir.
Yeah, Jim does the chummy thing a lot. It's like, we're all lawyers here. Mr. Gunn's not a lawyer, but he's part of that circle because he provides services to attorneys
went
through the
to,
annuities and stuff. So he's part of all those
Maggie
plaintiffs
Paul's
events.
Yes, sir, I did.
And then after the funeral, you went out to Moselle.
Yes, sir.
So Jim's like, look, we're all friends here.
And
Doesn't do with the female witnesses as much.
I'm sure, what was
Sam.
Alec's demeanor?
He was a broken man. You could tell. He was very upset. He was very upset.
Okay.
And then you saw him a few months later at that convention at Hilton Head.
Yes, sir, I did.
And you said he was with his brother, John Marvin,
Yes, sir.
and his son Buster was there too. You remember?
I believe that's correct. Yes, sir.
Now, John Marvin's not a lawyer, right?
He's not.
Is it unusual for John Marvin to come to the lawyer convention?
I had not seen him before, no, at the convention, no.
Right. He was there supporting his brother?
I believe so, yes.
That's speculative, but okay.
And people were trying to lift Alec's spirits up and support him.
Also
during that period
speculative,
of
but
time.
I think so,
okay.
yes, sir.
1 second,
I don't have anything for him. Nothing further from the state.
Thank you, sir.
Nobody asked him how he felt about his company being used to steal
Client
from
next
clients. Why? Ask. Who? Stop cutting the mics. Brian, somebody. Why aren't we calling Chris Wilson next? Or the president of Palmetto State Bank? We need to finish this. I don't know who this next witness is, but it looks like law enforcement, which is going to be confusing as hell if it's not about this. Why didn't they ask him about his friend whose wedding he went to using his company?
Thank you.
Okay.
You'll have a seat on the stand. If you'll state your name, just that microphone there, and spell your last name for the record.
Brian Hudak, Hudak.
Brian or Ryan?
Agent Hudak, how are you doing today?
Pretty good.
Where are you employed?
South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, also known as SLED.
All right, and what is your duties there?
I'm a special agent in computer crimes.
All right. And just briefly, what do your duties entail?
Conduct forensic examinations, cell phones, computers, vehicle infotainment modules, any sort of electronic device that can hold evidence. Also, I'm an evidence custodian for the unit.
Just a moment, sir.
We have whiplash. So we're going to computer forensics. Okay. The ordering of witnesses, it could
have
be.
the jury go to the jury room for a recess.
Oh, what happened? Something happened.
Okay. Tell me.
I don't know. The judge is talking to somebody. I want to go see if we have a image of the judge on the other feed. Nope, we've got this witness. I don't know what's going on, so we'll find out. But I heard the judge say, "Can you tell somebody?" So I don't know why the court needs a break, but the court needs a break for some reason, and we'll find out. That's not a bathroom break. That is an unexpected break, and I don't know why. So we'll see. I'm going to answer some questions, but the change in witnesses makes the story hard. And this, again, I could be being overly critical. This could be scheduling issues, but everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to evacuate the building.
What?
At this time, so we'll be in recess until we discover what's going on.
Well, that was unexpected.
We'll couple this with a lunch break until 2:30.
The court is in recess until 2:30. Okay. So they're evacuating the courthouse. What a mess. Happened during the Brooks trial. It's unfortunately happened during too many trials that are streaming, which always gives me issues with access to justice and streaming when these things interrupt trials. So I don't know. I'm sure we'll see tweets from those in court, like Chanley Painter, and we'll see what's going on, but they're not going to have any more idea than what we have unless someone tells them, but it's unlikely law enforcement is going to say anything. Weird things happen in court. So we will be back at 1. I'm not going anywhere. We will be back at 1:35 until I have to leave for the airport. So 1:35 Central Standard Time. I'm going to answer some questions and we're going to take a lunch break. So I have a little bit of time to answer questions now because the court is evacuating. And yes, Matt Bond is correct.
This is exactly what happened. There was just too much heat from Mr. Gunn, and it caused a smoke show, and the court had to evacuate.
I'm going with that. That's what I'm going with. So, what a wild afternoon. So, I'm sure we will see people being interviewed outside of court. I have been in multiple courthouses that have been evacuated at different periods of my career and my life. It is very rare that you get more information until after. You generally get the court is being evacuated and told how far to evacuate, but we rarely got more information. Courts have been evacuated, in my experience, the things I have been in court for. We had a smoke alarm break and they couldn't figure out if there was a fire or not a fire. Because it wouldn't stop going off. There was a water issue, and there had been a couple different kinds of threat issues that we had dealt with. So we have had all kinds of different reasons to evacuate. So with that, Miss Butta said we have 50 Shades of Grey in the chat. Yep. And everyone asking him to read the audiobooks. We have a whole second career for Mr. Gunn that he definitely doesn't want, or maybe he does. I don't know. Mr. Gunn, there are career opportunities for you. Audiobooks, sir. You would be very popular narrating audiobooks. So let us keep going. Dr. B said, when you mentioned Dr. B, I perk up. Does your Dr. B watch your videos? No. I think AM may be found not guilty. We're not at the end of the prosecution's case yet. They've got a long way to go. But thank you, Dr. B, for talking about my Dr. B. But no, my Dr. B does not watch my videos. He has to hear me talk about it after I'm done. Dos mio, said his voice is authoritative yet soothing. It's confusing, just like this trial. Yep, it is. Yep. Can we get Forge Daddy on to talk about annuities? We'll try. Emily Wapp, please fan the chat to cool them. You're right. I should have had my fan out. I got distracted by my cat. My cat was acting up. My actual cat, Fred was acting up. The cat was acting up while Forge Daddy was testifying. But chat, here we go. We'll cool it down for a minute. We'll just do it. To the Lawnard who sent me the fans, by the way. Thank you. They are glorious. I was trying not to blow everybody's ears out with the fan, but yes, chat. There you go. Everybody's been cooled. Everybody's been cooled. Let's see. Liv is inside again. Question for EDB/chat. I know a former judge from CAD. I asked his view on the trial. He's not followed the case. Asked for sufficient input. Is there a good timeline anywhere? He's too old for EDB. I don't know, but that's a good ask for the chat. My QuickBits channel kind of has a timeline on it for last week. Kathy said, having lost a 22-month-old grandchild to murder, the best thing to say is I'm sorry. Thank you, Kathy. That's always what I default to is I'm sorry when things happen. I've had this touch my life too much, and I always feel like I don't know what to say. And I'm sorry, and I'm here is generally where it defaults. I'm sorry, I'm here, and can I bring snacks are kind of my top 3. Who is Captain America for this case? Skies. He is a officer who was in body cam footage wearing a Captain America shirt. And he was helping collect evidence. Court TV is reporting a bomb threat. So and this is the thing, Chanley probably has law enforcement contacts. So I will go grab that from Chanley, but I'm not surprised. It's just so frustrating in high profile trials. It's basically swatting, right? It's the same thought. People want to watch the response, and it's just really frustrating. But because it's live streaming, those who enjoy watching and getting a response for things like this get to see it in action. I think it's basically the same principles as swatting. It's not that the court is actually a threat. It's that people want to see the response. Let's see. Forge Consulting made a statement to the media. We're going to pull that up, and then we'll look at Chanley Painter's tweet real quick. This is from Liz Farrell. Actually, I should swoop. I forgot to swoop. I didn't bing yesterday. I didn't swoop. I'm discombobulated. So much happened right there at the end. All right. We are hearing that the court has been evacuated due to a bomb threat, and we are seeing an immediate Forge Consulting press release that was released by Liz Farrell, who is one of the co-hosts of the Murdaugh Murders podcast and Cup of Justice with Mandy Matney. Forge Consulting releases statement following testimony of Murdaugh trial. They had this ready. Michael Gunn, a principal and senior settlement consultant for Forge Consulting, made the following statement today following his testimony in the murder of Alec Murdaugh in Walterboro, South Carolina. Forge Consulting has been in business for over 20 years, building our reputation on professionalism, experience, and integrity. We have built our business on the truth, and that's exactly why we're here today, to tell the truth. I don't know what happened in the horrible night in Islandton when Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were murdered, but I do know that Alex Murdaugh used our good name to defraud his clients, his law firm, and countless others. I know that Bank of America could have stopped it all there with a single phone call to verify the truth. Unfortunately, that call was never made. I wonder how much tragedy could have been avoided if it was. Oh, tea. Attorneys for Forge Consulting LLC have said that they're prepared to take legal action in response to the serious harm Alec Murdaugh and Bank of America have done to the financial firm's business reputation and credibility due to Murdaugh's and Bank of America's participation in a scheme that allowed Murdaugh to use Forge brand in order to defraud millions of dollars from his clients and colleagues. Wow. So it sounds like they are looking to potentially sue Bank of America. I do not know a ton about banking, but when you DBA a business, would Bank of America have known that the DBA Forge was trying to mimic this forge. But that is a big statement, and they were ready for this. They knew that they were going to throw this down, obviously, because they had this well prepared to release the second he got off the stand. And they had just called a second witness when the courtroom was evacuated. But Forge is coming in hot and is pissed. But did the Bank of America local branch know about the ins and outs with Forge? I don't know. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but Forge is not going to stand down at all. They're not going to stand down at all. All right, we're going to what Chanley has to say, and then we're going to go back to our super chats, and then I'm going to go make sure that I am completely packed so that I can get on a plane and actually stream with you long enough to do that. All right. So let's see. All Chanley said really was bomb threat at the Alec Murdaugh courthouse breaking court TV. So I'm sure they'll have more. Chanley has contacts on the ground. She's been there since this trial started. And then Avery Wilkes, who is a local South Carolina reporter. And you know how I know that? Because he has a picture of him holding a gamecock. I believe that's what that is. So now we know. He's also like an award-winning journalist and stuff. A lawyer in the case texts me a bomb threat is the reason for the evacuation. So again, he has contacts with the lawyers on the ground. So that's who I've been following along with. Avery's been covering this story for long before this went to trial. Same with Mandy Matney and Liz Farrell. So, wow, that's what's happening. Do lots of courts still use an actual physical Bible to swear the witnesses? I have no idea. It's regionally different. In California, you just hold up a hand and swear. I don't know. So I don't know how many. If there are lawyers or people who've been jurors in the chat, you're welcome to say what state you've done that in and whether you had a physical Bible. That might be regionally specific. It might not. I just don't know. My husband asked why I'm so excited over this witness. I must have yelled yes a bit too loud. Or not that, Karen, it was the tone with which you yelled it. I forgot to do our FAQ. We need to FAQ. We didn't FAQ. I forgot to FAQ. FAQ. So with that, you guys are sharing regionally. Nevada is only raising the hand, no Bible or book. In Louisiana, you just hold up your hand and swear. No Bible in Oregon. Chanley is reporting. We got to that. Let's see. Been here every day for Depp and Murdaugh. It's a lot. I mean, we have definitely earned our time on court watch. Question: can the defense use this to say, look, he's being threatened? Not without more information. Emily, look at Fitz News Live. Will do. I will absolutely do that. Let me get it pulled up. And then we're going to keep answering questions and take a break as well, because Fitz News is one of the handful of entities that was allowed to be there. Same with Court TV. Court TV takes a lot of commercials. Let's see. They've got the outside of the courthouse and a view from the outside of the courthouse. So this is the Fitz News outside of the courthouse, which if it doesn't stop moving, we're gonna switch feeds because it will actually make me motion sick. But it looks like there is people gathered outside. It doesn't look like they've been moved that far away. So I will keep monitoring these as we take a look, but we will take a break for lunch at some point. And let me just check Court TV real quick and see if because I know Court TV and Law and Crime have cameras outside the courtroom. Law and Crime has gone to Talking Heads. I don't know if Court TV has or not. So if they're smart, they'll just go live with Chanley because she's right outside the courthouse. So we will take a look at Court TV as well. And they have not switched back to that yet. So we will see. I'm sure that we will get there. No Bible, because in some people it means nothing. I mean, it just depends. I think it really just depends on the state where it is. So let's see. Question: if Brooks goes to trial again, will you cover it? Yes, I will. I will absolutely cover it because I will absolutely cover it. Question, could this have been that gone wrong? The state asked about that early on in this trial as we get back to our questions. The state asked about that early in this trial, and the officers talked about looking for some of the indicia that that is what happened, looking under and around Paul for a weapon or under and around Maggie for a weapon to see if that's what happened. And they did not believe that's what happened, because if that's what happened, there would be weapons there and readily apparent. So that was not the state's theory. And I know I'm way behind on Super Chat, but I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. Will Alec Murdaugh serve in a different type of prison if convicted of murder versus the financial crimes? No, the difference, well, security might be an issue, but that goes more to him than the type of prison. But, oh, I just lost my own feed. Hold on. Where did it go? Where did it go? There we go. But I have lost my own stream. Sorry, y'all. Give me 1 second. That got super confusing as I was trying to switch screens. Where did it get back here? It's nonsense. My stream is having nonsense with me. But if they deal with or if they switch to a federal crime, then it is quite different. So it just depends on whether it's federal or not. And that is really the big difference. So everything is in Alec's marital life is not being at the kennels. Everything in Alec's marital... Oh, sorry. I'm reading that totally wrong. Everything in Alec's material live not being at the kennels. Paul's Snapchat puts that to bed. And we know that Paul and Maggie were shot 2 minutes after the video was recorded. The defense, I think, is going to push that timeline, but we will see what happens. This witness just described me in a nutshell, so I can relate. If some jury is ADHD, maybe they will relate as well. That's really humanizing. Yeah, the description of Alec definitely struck a chord with me as well. And a lot of our chat are neurodivergent or ADHD. And with that, we got to see really a description of what that sometimes is like. Question, are there jurors outside? I don't know. And that makes me nervous because I don't know, which is why I'm monitoring but not streaming. Because that absolutely makes me nervous. And I had concerns about that during Deputy Heard when people were filming outside of the courtroom as well. I wasn't always sure if jurors were walking back and forth, and you couldn't always tell. So it is something that makes me nervous. So when I'm hesitant to pull up streams like that, that's why. So we definitely didn't get through too many checks today. Why can't the jury take notes? The jury seems to have not asked the judge, and this seems to be regionally and judge by judge decided. Judges get to choose. So yeah, if the jury asks, I don't know if the judge would provide them or not, but the jury hasn't asked. It might be a jurisdiction where the jury has to ask the court and they just haven't. If SLED is the only one investigating this bomb threat, I think I'll stand a bit further back from that courthouse. And this might be local, because local has been on scene every day when Alec is moving in and out, not SLED. It's been Colton County, I believe, is the PD that's outside every day. My cat was acting up too. It's Bree, it's fair. Local Journal tweeted this: alert, the Colton County Courthouse is being evacuated for unknown reasons. Court is expected to resume at 2:30 pending further notice. Yep, and we'll be back unless court does not resume today, but now we know what the lawyers have told the journalists on scene. Gunn is responsible for the bomb threat because he dropped a bomb on me. Fair. It's fair. It's fair. Hold on. This was too late. But it was deserved. It was deserved. In NC, we say, I hate that for you. Here's food. That's very fair. And I always love, I hate that for you. It just really is. It been bugging me to gild the lily, quote, to add unnecessary ornamentation to something beautiful in its own right. And that's really the court. I got the sense that the attorney was using gild the lily as a, not to exaggerate or not to add too much to it. That's the sense that I got. So yes, I mean, I've heard the phrase, I've not seen it used in court much. And because there are so many people outside the courthouse, and I am not sure where the jurors have gone, I'm not going to, because the jurors can't stay inside either. I'm not going to switch over there. So this guy's going away for life on other charges anyways. Jamie Lynn, yeah. 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 And if y'all are sitting here going, why did the prosecution bring this indictment? I still don't know. I still don't know. I still don't know. The defense is going to argue that it was societal pressure and like a rush to judgment. But the jury might be wondering the same thing. So they really might. A drink for the thirsty chat. Also, Dillery Spears. Dillery is funny. As a fellow ADHDer, how do you ever stay awake during this as a prosecutor? Also, all the cuddle for the non-danger floofs. Oh, when you're in it, you're in it. I mean, you're in it. You're in it like a sporting event. You are in it. There were days that it was hard if I wasn't talking, to be honest. There were times during jury instructions, because there's one judge that I worked with that told a lot of stories during jury instructions. And when you've done a lot of trials in front of that judge's courtroom, you know the stories. And it's like watching a movie that you've seen a bunch and you're just kind of like, that could be difficult, especially after lunch. But when it's your case, you're on high alert. And so really it's just adrenaline. Truly. Emily had that adrenal fatigue treat. It was miserable. The adrenal fatigue was miserable. But that happened later in my career. Real Forge is suing Alec Murdaugh, fake Forge. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. They might have already. There's so many cases. I know I only have a portion of them, and I've got a lot of the civil cases already pulled and researched, but I'm not surprised. I just evacuated the court, kind of chaotic here. Keely, it seems definitely chaotic there. And I don't know where the jurors have gone, which is why I'm not pulling up those videos. Bold statement. I'm surprised they didn't use allegedly when speaking of his crimes, from 11:35 today. That I think is going towards the forged statement on social media. It is a bold statement. But I think when we have confessions from Alec in several different forms, I understand why it's such a bold statement. At this point, they could call Ronald McDonald to the stand and talk about the new McNuggets. There's new McNuggets, and I wouldn't bat an eye. I'm distracted. There's new I didn't know there were new nuggets. Nuggies. Maybe trying him for this to force him to show he has hidden money so he didn't need it, so they can recoup even if they didn't think he's guilty. Kay, the prosecution ethically, legally, can only bring this case if they think they can prove that he committed the murders beyond a reasonable doubt. That is the only reason to bring this case. Yes, they took it to a grand jury, but they have to be convinced they can prove that he pulled the trigger beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what they have charged him with. So if they're bringing this for other purposes, it is completely improper and could lead to everyone being disbarred, if not worse. I'm in Columbia SC. We had 3 days of evacuations for the same thing at high schools last week. That's frustrating. Let's get Mr. Gunn to read the next book. Yes, all. Let's get him to do everything. Mr. Gunn, thank you. Can we just get an effing timeline from the DA? Wouldn't it be nice, in the words of the Beach Boys? Wouldn't it be nice? Maybe that's what this next witness was going to do. Maybe this was the timeline witness. Maybe that's where we were at. We were at the timeline. We had a forensic person on the stand, or maybe they're just the GPS person. I don't know. But today's going to get a lot slower, and I will feel less bad about hopping on a plane. What's the longest trial you were a part of? The longest trial in court, I mean, most of my trials were a week and a half, but I did a few trials that were over a month, 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks. But most were like a week or two on average. I did a lot of paper cases. Some of the homicide cases took a little bit longer, especially with a lot of cell phone evidence. But some of my shortest cases were like a day. So there were times I was like closing a trial and having a jury deliberating and starting another trial in a different courtroom. Early in my career, I was very, very, very busy and in trial quite a lot. Is it getting hot in here? Y'all ain't right. Yes, it did get hot for a while. Apparently too hot. They had to call in the fire department. And again, this is me assuming that this is a threat similar to a swatting where somebody is seeking a moment of seeing this happen on TV. And this is not an actual dangerous situation where people are not in danger. Everybody seems to be standing real close to the courthouse in the Fitz News video. Motion for a forged daddy emoji. I'll have to figure out what that is, and that'll be after trial. Prosecution, I'm practicing for my next job as a tour guide, doing all this leading. Clever. There was a lot of leading. It's hard for me to watch the trials without you now. Thank you. Your knowledge fills in so much. You're my favorite. Well, thank you. I definitely have become the, well, we're here. We're here to do this. We're here to be the go-to. We're here to explain. I have a lot of court experience. Also, there's times when we just need some sass. Or maybe someone wants to hurt. And that's the thing, Matt. It could be. It could be. And if it's targeted, we've got a lot of questions. If somebody is targeting this family, they should have figured that out. They should have absolutely figured this out. The jury is probably thinking, I didn't sign up for this. Yep. Twitter says jurors were removed with police escort. Good. Good. Sorry, Emily. If they say it's a bomb, I would feel in danger. I don't apologize to me. I would too. I think they should absolutely be further away, but there's a lot of people not further away. Is that a green screen behind you? No, it's my office. How do they remove the jury discreetly? Well, it sounds like the internet has answered us and they remove them with police escort, which makes the most sense. I would 100% want to take notes if I were a jury. Yeah, I would ask. I would absolutely ask. And it's fair for people to be concerned. It's fair for people to be concerned. And the thing that worries me is this and can this fuck with the mind state of the jury? Will this mess with them and how they think about this case and how they think about this defendant? Is the purpose of something like this, again, like I said, for a swatting purpose where somebody just wants to have their moment and see whatever they do streamed the same way that people swat gaming streamers and stuff like that? Is that, well, and other streamers, I know people have swatted Nick Rekieta. So is this that where people want that moment of seeing all the chaos play out? Or is someone trying to fuck with this jury and what they're thinking? We won't know. We don't know. But it will be investigated, and I hope somebody finds out. Buster wasn't in there for the last witness, was he? I saw Buster in court all morning. Is the man behind Alec Daly Maggie's father? I have not seen any of Maggie's family there. Bomb threats are federal crimes. They are indeed. I forgot that Tug had been swatted. I mean, lots and lots, and I'm sure I don't know all of them. Lots and lots have been. So let us finish up questions. Is the man behind out? So no, I haven't heard that any of Maggie's, from the reporters that know this case well, including Mandy Matney and others, I have not heard that any of Maggie's family has been in court at all, ever. Thank you for following this. Sister lives near them. She speaks nothing of it. I think lots of folks are nervous. I think lots of folks are nervous too. And I worry that this will make that worse. I work in financial crimes. Banks have auto alerts for fraud. What AM did with Forge, people do a lot to fake churches for money laundering. But I would wonder why there wouldn't be a way to catch that. I don't usually pick up hitchhikers, but if Mr. Gunn was hitchhiking, I would pull over and take him anywhere he wanted to go. He has an honest face. Has anyone discussed AM not having much blood on him after checking Paul and Maggie's pulse? We have, but they haven't really brought it around yet with the witnesses. We have. And I think that's where you lean into the GSR. If you're the prosecution, you lean into there's not much on him at all. There's nothing to show because Paul and Maggie would have had GSR. They have stippling. You lean into the fact that if he had touched Paul and Maggie, he would have had blood on his hands. He would have had GSR. He's too clean to do what he said he did. And there is room to work that in because he is too clean to do what he said he did. So he's lying or he cleaned up. But why lie then? Why not just say, and then it was like, I had to clean my hands. I had to get clean. Like I touched them. I tried to move their bodies. I was horrified and I had to just get it off of me. And I just had to get away. He never said that. Holly said, I don't hear the apology to the clients he stole from. We haven't seen that. Conflating CFO having her back with Alex's character. Ick. Yeah, I definitely think the CFO is the one who had her back, not Alec. But I do see where the defense was kind of saying, and they treated you well and you still have your job. And yeah. Does anything in this trial not cut both ways? No. I can't pronounce Cornchone well. Johnny Cornchone, pickle at law. If it doesn't make sense, you must find for the defense. It makes sense. I just can't pronounce words. Defendant bringing in So pros lose shock value. Checkmate. This is going to rehab. The defense bringing it up, so the prosecutions use shock value. I don't think they should be using it for shock value, and I think if they did, they might lose the jury on that too. But I can see that absolutely, Matt Bond. Me's a baby. So if it is a duck shotgun, and we know that waterfowl bullets are out of steel and not lead, the GSR only looks for combinations that include lead. So how did the gun transfer GSR to Alec? This is a fan-fucking-tastic point that no one has made in this trial yet, that you have connected that I had not connected, but this is very, very fair. Nobody asked what the whoop gun was. Nobody asked what it was, and they allowed it in. But the jury's not going to have that information, that if the whoop gun is a duck gun and the duck gun only shoots steel, then it couldn't have left GSR. It's very fair. And they didn't ask the GSR expert about the bird shot, because we know there was bird shot at the scene, and they didn't ask about that either. You're raising great, great questions. This is a fantastic question, but nobody brought it up. Kestrel says there's lead in the primer. That's fair. So let's continue on. Motive: felt boat crash began, downfall, blame son. Possible. Bo Whoomp: custom storied shotgun of Nash Buckingham, famous turn of the century author, hunter, conservationist, the Excalibur of duck hunting. That's very dramatic. I mean, it's got a good name, the Bo Whoomp. We were all like, what the fuck? Also, you've got Jim Griffin being like, I'm just a country boy. Well, you don't know if his daddy's Bo Whoomp was in the back of the truck when it went mudding. I don't know how we got between the two. I don't know where we got between the two. At all. At all. Bomb threat, Alex take away, but sheriffs and jury. I think they took everybody away, but we'll see. So if it is a duck shotgun, and we know, anyway, this was a great point. While he's endearing, what does it prove about the murder? If they just want to chat, bring back Rogan Gibson to at least talk about the dog. I mean, we are definitely far afield with the financial stuff, but I think the tie-in on the financial, and we'll see if it's the prosecutor's tie-in, is Alec was lying to everyone about everything. Does that make him a murderer? It makes him a liar. Was the world crashing down? Yes. Was he trying to cover up that his world was crashing down? Yes. But does that mean he would have done this to cover up that his world was crashing down? I don't know. Paul took the truck in Friday before the murders. But then the truck wouldn't have still been there after the murders. And Ronnie said he went after the murders. Oh, no, he went to look for video, but I think he said the truck was still there. Maybe they had taken the truck back after it broke down on the side of the road. It was very unclear. And the thing is, it's not our job to clear it up. It's the attorney's job to clear it up. But the more questions there are, the more room for doubt there is. On a hunting property where GSR gets everywhere, and the fact he was out hunting earlier that day with Paul, why isn't he covered in it? Why so little GSR and blood? And if the prosecution doesn't make this point well, it will get lost. But this is the question in my mind the most. Question, Emily, why is the defense able to bring in evidence of character but not the prosecution? The prosecution absolutely fucked the football on allowing that limiting instruction to say character. I don't think that's what the standard limiting instruction says. The defense wrote a limiting instruction. And it is the prosecution's job to object. Because the court said this could come in for 403 purposes. The court said this could come in for res gestae. The court was allowing that. And then the defense offered a limiting instruction doing their job, and the prosecution didn't object. So that's where we are. That's where we are. I think the prosecution was allowed by the court to do it until the defense entered that limiting instruction. I still think they could fight that instruction, but it's been given twice and the shit's out of the horse. Amanda said, I think they put the kibosh on asking about blood on him when the defense asked one of the first witnesses, said he rolled over Paul's body, and Dick asked if he had blood on him, and it was a no. They asked a couple times if they saw like kneeling marks in the blood, and they asked the other witnesses, but the other law enforcement witnesses put on gloves and things like that. So maybe that's why. I would need to go back and listen to that testimony. Debbie said, did you find sus that the interviewing police said his shirt looked fresh for him sweating so much? And the lab person said that they were surprised the shirt smelled fresh, even damp. I didn't find it sus that they said that. I found it sus that the shirt was so dry, given that we know he was at least 20 plus minutes from the time he called 911 to law enforcement getting there. So he would have been sweating. He was still sweating. And by the time they did that interview, it was 1 a.m. and the shirt was still dry, but he couldn't have changed shirts while law enforcement was there from 10:30 to 1 a.m. All of it's a bit odd to me. It's all odd. But yes, it is odd to me. I really wish they had given Miss Shelley a chance to say what she needed to say. Same. She looked like she needed to get a weight lifted. She did, and they weren't giving her the space to do it. It pissed me off a lot. I'm loving the Tasmanian devil reference. I live in Tasmania, Australia. Hello, Island Taz. Is it Taz? Like Tasmanian devil? I'm going with that. But yes, I get that. I've been that whirling dervish. I get that. Question, do you think it's possible for the jury to add up evidence to equal guilt of murder without believing the prosecution's story theory? I think that would be very hard for them to do. Because if you don't believe the prosecution, then where you're at is the prosecution is overreaching. And so if you as a jury think that the prosecution's overreaching, I don't know how you get to guilt, because then they're not doing their job and there's doubt. But maybe the jury doesn't have doubt. It's really, really hard to say. So I'm going to try to get my tab back and see what Court TV is doing live, because it looks like Chanley is out in front of court. I just don't know if they will show it on this feed. Nope. Well, that's frustrating. All right, we're going to answer a few more questions, and then we're going to take a break so everybody has time for lunch. And if I wasn't packing, I would sit here and just chat with y'all, but we've got to do those things so I can be with you more later. All right. Alec had a burner phone too. We do know that he had a burner phone, but I think they were talking about the office phone. Nobody's tied in the burner phone, and that hasn't come in for the jury yet. That was in Chris Wilson's 404 testimony. I hope they ask about it. If cause for financial can be cause for murder, I think that's talking about the addiction. I don't know how they're going to do that and what they're going to do. I believe Dick didn't request redactions because if it's coming in at all, he's going to use it to his defense. I think you're absolutely right. I think Dick is like, fine, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about all of it, and we're going to make it make sense. And we're going to tell the jury he was in rehab, and we're going to get out ahead of it and say, this is a man who was capable of this. He was so trapped in his own whatever. Maybe failing to request is a tactic to give grounds for appeal. No, you have to. We are not at IAC, ineffective assistance of counsel. We are not there. We are very much in the realm of defense strategy. And these defense attorneys are very capable with their strategy. I just don't always understand where they're going. And then later I go, oh, I see. Coming to Nashville this weekend to see David Cook. Where do I need to visit or eat? I think the Frothy Monkey is iconic. And if you're in downtown Nashville, easy to get to. Adele's in downtown Nashville is one of my favorite places in Nashville. Adele's is so freaking good. I'm sure the chat and the locals can give more realms on that, but Frothy Monkey, breakfast, coffee, amazing. Adele's is great. If you have time to do the on-off bus tour, I love the on-off bus tour in Nashville. If you have time to get over to the Parthenon near Vanderbilt, it really is pretty incredible. Go on over and see the Parthenon. Dr. B, where would you tell someone coming to Nashville for the weekend to go eat if they're in downtown? I said Adele's and Frothy Monkey. Absolutely. Dr. B agrees. Are you getting ready to leave? Yeah. Tell me. Sorry, y'all. Dr. B's got to tell me things because he's getting ready to leave, and then I've got to get ready to leave. So give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Thanks, Dr. B. He was reminding me of things I needed to be reminded of because he does that. Fred's on my desk being ridiculous. Farmers market. Parthenon is great. So let's see. We're going to keep getting through all of our super chats. So thank you for that. Sorry for the sidebar. We were doing family strategy things. And it's just life with kids is busy. So in theory, when Alec realized he was going down, he could have hidden the money offshore or somewhere else so Buster can go after it after all this. It's possible. There are quite a lot of reports that he took at least one trip to the Bahamas after the murders. So need to play Elmo's song when they ask for the Elmo. I think YouTube would have issue with that. You won't believe it, but there is an actual legend of Bo Whoop, the provenance of dreamers. Do a Google, it's worth it. I will go down that rabbit hole on a plane later today because today has popped off in a very unexpected fashion. I feel like the genuine care people have for AM could backfire for the defense since the level of betrayal is increased by the level of care. Elena, I think that's a very, very good point. And I think we see it across person after person after person that Alec, and I said this yesterday on Twitter in response to something from Mandy Matney, that what they've shown with the financial crimes, and I don't know if the prosecution will argue this or not, but what they've shown with the financial crimes is that Alec was able to devastate the people that loved him, the people that loved him the most. And that is a point that the prosecution is going to have to point out clearly. The lawyers that are repaying his financial misdeeds, the brotherhood and his literal brother that he was stealing from, the clients who trusted him. He had no problem hurting those who are around him. Theory, if Paul didn't crash the boat, he wouldn't have needed to steal larger amounts. He may have needed Maggie to sign for the loans to cover it. Murders gave him time and access to cover his crimes and to not have to keep paying for at least the criminal defense with regard to the boat case. I mean, it's boat case, boat case, boat case. All this financial info is just a briar patch. Prosecution, let's go, boys. Defense, oh, please don't throw me in the briar patch. Feeling Dick and Poot were, oh, no's, not the financial stuff. I mean, I think Dick and Jim can argue the financial stuff to their advantage. None of this has to do with the murders. None of this is motive. This shows how many people had a right to be angry at Alec. Though on the flip side of that, because everything goes both ways in this case, a lot of the clients, or all of the clients, according to Jeannie, didn't know they were being stolen from. We talked about Creighton being Hopper from Jaws a couple times. The Harpic, I can't even pronounce Harputlian is a Harpiclian. Harpiclian? I don't think I can. I think the Poot is its own nickname. The defense attorneys litigate more civil, correct? Yes. What about the prosecution? Would that explain why they are focusing on the financial crimes? The prosecution also heavily focuses on financial crimes. It's the Attorney General's office, and they are also doing all of Alec's financial crimes. I imagine the AG's office covers murder very rarely, if at all. AM had a pattern of covering thefts and wanted to buy time to cover the $790K. And with Wilson, he almost succeeded, but the AG is not bringing that out well. I agree with you. And I don't think they can wait till the close of evidence to tie it all together. They need some witnesses to start tying this together. They've gotten better today, but they're tying together the financial crimes, not the murder. Oldest child turned 17 yesterday, less than a year to go, and it went so fast. Excuse the cliche. It does go fast. And happy birthday to your teen. Jim also needs to remember that not only did he allow Alec to be interviewed numerous times, he also, but he and Poot have given numerous testimonies to reporters for local papers. Well, not testimonies, but given numerous stories. But yeah, they allowed Alec to be interviewed and have his phone downloaded. That's never going to go well. It's always going to be used against you. Anything you say, when they say anything you say can and will be used against you, it's the facts. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Anything at all. And they will. You saw it, that line in the text. What's the prosecution going to argue? Let me see. I wrote down the line in the text. The more guilt I have, I did the most damage to those I love the most, and he was trusted by everybody. That's what came out of that text. And the prosecution is going to use that text to say he did the most damage to those he loved the most. That should be the theme of their closing argument. Alec is a person who did the most damage to those he loved the most. His wife, his son, the law firm, his brother, his brothers, those that worked for him, those that trusted him, his clients. He damaged everyone. It is not outside of the realm of possibility, which is not beyond a reasonable doubt, As I'm sitting here spontaneously thinking about it. But going through, he did the damage to those he loved the most, including his wife and son. And then he lied about not being at the kennels. And then he lied about he asked Shelley Smith to say that he lied about, or to lie about how long he was at his parents' house. He clearly lied to police about moving Paul's body because there was nothing on him. He clearly had nothing on him. So he lied or he cleaned up. But either way, he's too clean. It just over and over and over. But I think those are the key points from that text message, but they're not tying it back. And we'll see how well they tie it back. With Depp v. Heard, you could see a very clear theory of the case. Even with Brooks, the prosecution gave us a very clear theory of case and very clear timeline. His wife's death prevents her from being an enemy, whether by divorce or costing more or by sharing anything spicy that she's gained. We don't have any evidence of that. I agree with you, but I don't know what the prosecution will say at the end of the day. Their theory seems to be moving, which is a bad place for them to be in, which is why it's smart that the defense rushed this to trial. Incidentally, I noticed Alec was packing up his stuff before the witness came on the stand, right before the bomb threat. That's interesting. I did not notice that. But they might have been able to hear what the judge was saying because the judge dismissed the jury and then took a call and it went silent. So maybe they knew. Question, wouldn't you hear gunshots and Maggie scream if he was sleeping on the couch? Did anyone ask? We haven't gotten there yet. I think they're just going to argue it. We still haven't heard how one man shot 2 humans with 2 different weapons and it fits into the timeline. We sure haven't heard that. Good info. 3 pieces of GSR is a normal result. 42 is a lot. I want to know how long GSR stays on slick surfaces like a tarp or nylon jacket. The witness said that they stayed until removed. So indefinitely. Let's see. We have been updated. Bye, B. I'll see you later. Dr. B, we are goodbye. I love you. I will see you later. Bye.
You want to take your lip gloss?
We're good. Love you, hon. Thank you. I'll text you from the airport. Okay. So yes, there is a bomb threat at the courthouse. The court is paused until 2:30 Eastern. We are going to take a break for lunch here in just a minute. So, can he be tried again if he hired someone to do it? No, I think that's going to get well into the realm of double jeopardy. So that is my gut response to that. I want to do more research. Could there be something in the weeds there? Oh, it's possible, but the heart of double jeopardy is not being twice in jeopardy for the same crime. And the underlying crime is murder, whether as an accomplice or not. And I don't think South Carolina has a specific murder for hire. I think it would go under accomplice liability. So I don't think so. I think he's guilty due to him lying, but he did not go to the kennel before his mom's and asking Shelley to lie. But the prosecution is burying that in the fraud info, which is a risk the prosecution runs. The jury may be falling asleep, could be, or at least realizing that the thing the state isn't proving is the murder. And it shows how much evidence there is when there's a lot of evidence. The state went a long way to show how much evidence there is for the financial crimes. It's going to make the evidence with the murders look not as thorough. So, thank you all for the well wishes. I'm going to get to some more questions. I don't believe he planned Maggie and Paul, but something happened. He panicked and the rest went to cover things up. And if that's the case, the prosecution hasn't argued that either. So, let's see. How will the evidence be protected with the evacuation? It will be in the courtroom, and the courtroom will be locked, and that's about it. I wish they'd focus on the kennel lie. They got it in, so we'll see what happens after that. So, why are the texts coming in from the old number? Oh, this was from earlier, the text crew. We did not switch to the new number. I talked about it a while back on a stream. We have stayed with our original text crew due to displeasure with the new option for the text crew. We're coming up with some other options for y'all for notifications when I go live. We are working on that. Jay said, I just want to say thank you for being such a huge inspiration. You're welcome. I also have ADHD and dyslexia. We rock, go our neurospicy selves, and was always nervous to follow my dreams. And now I'm going for SE teaching. Awesome. Absolutely. More neurodivergence in the field of SE. I would love to talk law and teaching with you. Always, always, always. It's OJ all over again. He might not have done it, but he was in on it, and the jury might think that, but I don't know if that's going to be enough. Question: what points do you think the prosecution has successfully made? Well, I think we've gotten to the fact that he was clean. He's lied. I still think the guns were family guns. I'm interested to see what the defense expert has to say about the weapons. I still think the guns were family guns. I don't think the prosecution has well pointed out who would step to this family, but I think that's a huge point here, and maybe we'll see that in other witnesses. Maybe we'll see that with Cousin Eddie. Who is going to be the one to step up to this family? I don't know. Would somebody actually attack this family? I don't know. But it's a good argument that they wouldn't, because they were respected, loved, and or feared. All. So what else? The lies, the timeline, I think they've well set the timeline from the phones. I just think that timeline is tight if it's Alec. Those are the points that have stuck with me the most. Oh, and we also got the Shelley Smith's testimony has stuck with me, even though we had to parse it through the weeds of that attorney's questioning. But it seemed like Alec was offering her favors, and we had a law enforcement witness that the chat, because Chat is Bay, pointed out, that said, don't let the Murdaughs do favors for you, and don't do favors for them. So we do have some good points. Maggie Paul said, Paul Murdaugh trucks, White Boy, and Dolly. We heard about that. I just trying to tie the timeline together with the lawyer that went to go investigate the trucks was hard. Lady Kofresi, if I was a juror, I would have no problem saying he is guilty of hiring someone more than he actually pulled the trigger. They don't know that he hired someone for the roadside incident. And once they know that, if they know that, it's going to be tough, because I think again, that cuts both ways. Andy said, as a defense attorney, I feel the defense has made a few fatal errors, and they've been revived by the consistent incompetence of the state. Yeah, the defense has absolutely let some stuff in they shouldn't have, but the state has just confounded everybody with all of it. Double-edged sword. I almost feel like the prosecutor is derailing the witness and opening the door for appeals. I don't think the prosecutor is opening the door for appeals in that way. I think going back all the way to 2012 gives a lot of room to argue if he's convicted. I need this case explained through interpretive dance. I think that's the interpretive dance we're getting for today. Paige Price, Alex has paid them all off. Cops replace laundered shirt. Prosecution plays the fool, even witnesses to tell the money story and nothing more. I mean, did he go into his bedroom and pull out another white shirt? And if it's a Hanes beefy tee, did he have a shirt with a pocket on it in one of those videos? I would need to go back and look at all the shirts. It's weird. They are using the financial crimes to prove motive. I wish they'd focus on the murders more. We'll get back to it. They're switching back and forth, which is weird. AM must be a shoe guy. 3 different styles of shoes: loafers, athletic, and deck shoes. Maybe it's just practical. I'm sure there's also like hunting shoes. Do you think the prosecution might be purposely and strategically throwing the case? I can't imagine that they would, but I'm a former prosecutor. The victims deserve better. Whoever killed Maggie and Paul should be brought to justice. Their families deserve knowing what happened. This community sounds like they were in complete fear after this happened to see if this family was being targeted. The entire community deserves justice. The victims deserve justice. So trying to throw that is illegal, reprehensible, and appalling. But the behavior of all the attorneys is confounding to me on both sides. And I think the prosecution, honestly, is too close to their case. They see it from too close up. And when they see it from that close up, they can't see the holes that the jury doesn't know yet. And that's part of the problem. So fraud has made me forget the murders. And even though murder info, they've hardly mentioned Maggie, feels like she's been largely forgotten. They've talked a lot about Paul. They've talked a lot about Paul. I have thoughts on that, but they're not fully parsed yet. Do you feel the judge has been too giving with allowing all these pieces? No. The judge has been ruling on what he's given. I think the judge's rulings have been consistent with the law. The judge told the defense today they needed to object more. Basically, he was saying, if the defense doesn't object, he said it like 3 times and they didn't. So the judge can only rule on objections when they're made. And the judge made a record that the defense has not objected much. How can you be sure it was him? I hear 2 and they are just voices, can easily be explained to some random male. Oh, I don't think so at all. This was from much earlier. On the audio, we've had people well familiar with Alec saying that it's him, and that's how they get the voice in. That's why they're going through multiple people saying it was him. I agree. Let the drug use in could provide alternate theory and maybe mean whistling gang members and prosecutor were slinging. I don't know. I think the defense will use it to their advantage, though. If the prosecution keeps this up, I find it hard to see how a jury convicts. It's so confusing. I live in Colton County and I'm a recovering addict. People will judge him poorly for that, and I wouldn't want it in. Majestic Mythical Arts, congratulations to you and your sobriety. And regionally, that is something that is going to have to be fought with, whether or not there's empathy for addiction or judgment. And so I realize where my own empathy sometimes overrides that I think people shouldn't, but it doesn't mean they won't. So I appreciate that input quite a lot. But it also makes me sad that there is not, that might not be met with empathy, but with judgment. And maybe it will be. But also it goes against this whole, everything was perfect. Mary Smith, EDB snark. I should probably plead guilty to those. I did say that when he was talking to his lawyer, because he's going to have to at some point. He's just going to have to at some point. Or not. I mean, go to trial on the financial crimes. Creighton will be fucking thrilled, but it just is. Why should the defense object to all the hearsay when she is literally proving their case? I thought she was doing both, but yes, it is a fair point. And if the prosecution's eliciting things that are good for the defense that they couldn't get in, they shouldn't object. But again, they know their theory of the case better than I do. So it's easier for them to say, oh, this helps us. We know what she's going to say, than us sitting here going, why are you doing this? They know exactly what is going to be said. So they know exactly what's going to come up. They know what those interviews say. So they can make that call on the fly. I'm looking at the legal grounds and objections going, this is hearsay and hearsay and hearsay. It doesn't even make sense. So with all of that, I appreciate all of you. I appreciate you being here. We're going to readjust. Miguelina, I forget what time I said. The court said 2:30, right? So we're going to be back at 1:25 until I have to leave. So we will be back in the afternoon. We will see what happens. I think there's probably not a lot more info coming out of court. The lawyers are in communications, it seems, with Chanley Painter and Avery Wilkes. So I'm going to take a look at what they have to say afterwards because they are in communications with the legal teams. I will be back at 1:35. Either the bomb threat will be cleared or not. It doesn't seem frantic there. So with that, take a break, get yourself some lunch, and I will see you at 1:35. Oh, let me just make sure that video, that this is looping to that. So if you guys want to be in the chat, you can be. In a little bit, we'll turn the chat on and we'll go from there. But let me just make sure on my end. And then I will have the podcast episode for you live in a little bit. So with that, we will be live back at 1:35 Central Standard Time. Thank you for being law nerds. You guys are amazing. Thank you for doing the YouTubey things. And, maybe I'll just put the podcast live now if you want to catch up on Tom Girardi, since we have about an hour of a break. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe we'll just do that so you guys can check it. All right. I will be back soon. Bye. You can find all the Law Nerd goodies at lawnerdshop.com. Connect with me on social media at The Emily D. Baker. And don't forget to check out my podcasts, The Emily Show, and the new podcast, Quick Bits, summarizing everything I talk about on my Tuesday and Thursday live streams. When you only have time for just the quick bits.